за нього я останнє. Донецьк, я взованій журбі, всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the stream on day 239 of the news.
And of course, we're going to be reporting the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine, not the past 48. It is now Wednesday, and of course, there's a whole bunch of things associated with Wednesday, but of course, one of the things is our daily news broadcast, and so of course, we'll be reporting on the past 24 hours. Now, I have to say, it has been quite an exhausting day for both Matthew and me behind the scenes. We've been having to do a lot of changing, and there will be a lot of changing going forward, but we are going to make sure to keep the news running regardless of what we have to do in the background. That was kind of what was stressing me out the other day. Just we're going to take that headlong, try and get it taken care of, and one thing I can assure y'all is that everything will hopefully be okay. And so with that, yeah! And let's start off in the first place, which would be Russia. And while, of course, it's kind of weird, it's really weird, actually, to start off inside of Russia. We do that very rarely on this channel, but this has something to do with tonight's title. Let's take a look at what Putin says. And of course, I don't have a translation for this, but I can tell you in 2 words what he said. Martial law in the occupied territories of Ukraine. Here is him saying that exact phrase. And also, good lord, look at that mug.
Поэтому мною подписан указ о введении военного положения в этих 4 субъектах Российской Федерации. Он незамедлительно будет направлен на утверждение в Совет Федерации.
Oh, well, of course, we don't have a translator with us, and I know everyone's about to be like, why don't you have a translator? Sadly, it's very difficult to work a translator into the schedule of how things work behind the scenes. But one thing I was able to summarize from this is that in all 4 occupied oblasts, the Donetsk, Luhansk, the Zaporizhia and Kherson oblasts have now been put under a state of martial law by the Russian Federation for the reason of the local civilians' protection, but the honest answer is that that is the first step towards things really taking a bad turn. We saw that the Ukrainians did this almost first thing when the war began. About on the 2nd or the 3rd day, the Ukrainian government declared martial law, and that's because at that time, not even the Ukrainian government really knew if Ukraine could hold out longer than a couple of days, and so it was a pretty severe state of emergency. Now we can see the Russians declaring martial law inside of Ukraine in the occupied territories itself, which is once again showing that, by and large, the official standpoint of the Russian government, and now we know for sure that Putin isn't being lied to. For him to have declared martial law, there must be some kind of idea on his part that the war in Ukraine is not going well, and it's most likely not going to be going incredibly well for the remainder of the war. So, that is, in its own way, a reason to celebrate, and of course, it's good to know that the Russians are panicking, and it's being seen all the way at the very higher levels. Now are they not only calling partial mobilizations, now this guy, who honestly looks depressed as hell now that this whole thing's gone south, is declaring martial law as well. So I don't think they're looking at a very prosperous war from here forward. But moving on into the next bit of news, we can see that the Russian propagandists have now reared their head again in a way that is significant enough for us to be able to show it. Of course, the Russian propagandists, by and large, have been fairly quiet over the past, I guess you could say, few days at this point, over, I guess you could say, what's been going on. Wait a minute. Hang on. Russian propaganda is doing something new. Did y'all see this right? The Putler Jugend. Let's take a look at what the Russians are doing these days. And would you look at that? They got a Russian combat veteran in front of a whole crowd of kindergarten class kids, showing them weapons from the front lines, and most likely telling them how they're just beating the Ukrainians and bombarding apartment buildings filled with kids just like them. And that's honestly kind of morbid when you think about it, that they got this guy who may or may not have been on the Ukrainian front lines, and now he's in school, and he's handing out the same weapons that are being used in this war to kids. I don't know about y'all, but is that a little bit messed up or what? What do you think, Matthew?
Seems messed up to me, for sure.
It seems messed up to me, and of course, if y'all know anything, one thing that the Russians love to do is make cadet programs, and of course, all countries in the world have cadet programs of a sort. The United States has the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, and also the Reserve Officer Training Corps, one's for high school, one's for college. But in neither of those will you ever get told, hey, we're going to, kill so-and-so. Let's go. I mean, like, in my JROTC, because I was in it for like a year. Well, no. Wait a minute. I was in it for 3 years. Matthew was in it for 4. Sorry about that, everyone. It's got a bit of a stigma around it. But in our JROTC, we actually learned about economics and how to file taxes and things like that. It was honestly much more beneficial than anything else that I did in high school. I thought it was a great service of learning how to save up money and things like that, but we didn't even get close to doing anything like this in JROTC, and this is just messed up to see that the Russians indoctrinate kids at such an early age with this kind of garbage, and that they would bring someone into the school to show off stuff like that. Also, is this just me, Matthew, or is this guy wearing plastic bags as shoes?
Yeah, really. Why is he wearing that? Those are like the protective covers you put on when you're going into like a nuclear facility.
Yeah,
isn't
no other kid has that on. Like, what's up with that? Anyways.
Watch them have just come from Chernobyl or something and walk into the school.
Kids, I'm about to show you a whole bag of magic radioactive dust anyone want to touch. I mean, this is just insane. And of course, the Russian propagandists have to find new ways to get new people involved in this war. And now it looks like they're going to start targeting the kids because the adults in the country have almost about had enough of the lies and they're starting to see through it fairly well. So why not go for the kids next? And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from Russia and that very bleak-looking scene. And I gotta say, that's certainly not a scene that you would want to show to most people, and for some reason, our map is not really loading. Of course, we hand-make the map, so it's kind of odd to see that. There we go. Alright, so, moving further on south into Russia, and into the area of Krasnodar, and most importantly, Chechnya, we saw that Ramzan Kadyrov's kids are on the front lines. Can you believe it, Matthew? He sent his 14-year-old and 16-year-old kids to the front lines in Ukraine.
I can believe it. He's cold.
Well, we're about to see here that that's not the case at all. And so let's play the video and let's listen to what we got. First, we can see them all hanging out in a pit. All of his kids all in one spot. Not a smart move. And also, does anyone else notice that audio doesn't really line up with the film? Like, it's almost like it's from a totally different video. And they're playing it over this one. I don't know about that. I don't know about y'all, but I gotta say that this seems to be a little bit far-fetched. And in fact, that's the reason why this marker is in the area of Stavropol and Krasnodar, is because this is most likely filmed in Russia at some kind of training field, nowhere near the front lines, and then they edited in the combat footage and noises. Well, the combat, I guess you could say noises, it's not really footage, later on. And so here's the rest of the video. We now see them aiming the RPG and firing it. Oh! It almost looked like he fired it at the ground. I love how the firefight just still keeps going, and you can tell it's not an intense one because of how they're acting. We have seen a million videos at this point in this war of Russians and Ukrainians in combat. We have never seen anyone this relaxed on either side. And of course, the Ukrainians remain cool as a cucumber in a firefight. We've seen that way too many times. But they are not even this calm and collected acting at that point. This tells me entirely that this is dubbed over audio. We now see them firing an AGS. You now see them all in the pit again. No fire nearby. Somehow out of all this gunfire we're hearing in the video, once again, we don't hear any rounds bouncing or flying around them anywhere. Now you see them firing another RPG. We can, of course, hear the edited-in combat footage, and well, noise is really still going on. It's just... I'm going to end it right here, because this is about the fakest that you can get. I mean, like, the audio is completely edited in. They're just showing these guys just hanging out in the field, not really doing much. And so we're going to move on from this because while we do love to laugh at Russian propaganda, we don't like to bore ourselves with it too much either. And so with that, we're going to be moving on into the next videos of the war and what's been going on today. But they're going to be outside of Russia, of course, where the real action is going on in Belgorod. Here we can see that, according to a local official, the power plant, which was also hit recently by a cruise missile, is having some quote-unquote voltage issues. Let's take a look at these voltage issues. That's a lot of electricity. Let's watch that one more time, Matthew, and tell me, does this look normal?
Spicy.
Spicy, I would have to say.
Spicy is the best way to describe it.
Now, if we have anyone here that works in an electrical company, can y'all tell me if a normal substation operates like that or not? Because I'm fairly certain that that may be a small overvoltage. And, of course, the Russians are within their complete right to say that this is a minor issue because, obviously, it's not that big of a deal. In fact, I think a lot of rave clubs have now moved their clubs outside for the meantime, so that way they can enjoy the nice strobe light effect that they're getting from the substation. And so with that, that's the end of the video, and I gotta say, pretty spicy, like Matthew said. Moving on out of Russia finally, and on into our location unknowns, we've also seen some interesting events happening on the front lines, of course in unknown locations. Starting off with a little Italian howitzer. These things, of course, we've seen before. They're called FH-70s. They fire in the standard NATO 155mm shell, but they are Italian-made and provided by the Italian government. A really neat artillery piece, and of course, the Italians have been known for pretty classy, pretty sporty stuff, like the Ferrari, the Lamborghini, and also the 18 battles of Asanzo. But without further ado, here is the video of these FH-70s at work.
Ми так як мобільна група, то у нас більшість, що ми виїжджаємо дуже далеко відпрацьовувати. Під'їжджаємо близько, але саме далі відпрацьовуємо. Під'їжджає їхня колона, засікли, ми виїхали, відпрацювали. Знайшли їхній командний пункт, він далі ж від передка. Ми під'їхали, засікли, відпрацювали по ньому. По-всякому буває. От треба підтримки передкові, допомогти, там не справляються. Нас так само відсилають.
Це може бути ворожа техніка, як танки, як БТР, БМП. Нещодавно, десь тижня 2 тому чи 3 тому, я вразив Бука. Якщо, наприклад, там мінометні взводи, так, чи танки, то це може бути відстань і 15-16 кілометрів. А там, якщо Бук, це вже 25-26, він же ж ховається.
I gotta say real quick, what a mustache on this guy! This man is rocking the full handlebar.
Now that's a stash.
Now that is a stash. I'm honestly envious of this man, and I would want his mustache if I could have it. Of course, that would be pretty tough because growing out, like I've tried doing that before. Growing out a mustache like that's pretty tough. But anyways, we're gonna let the video continue.
25-26, він же ж ховається, він не буде напередку сидіти, очікувати нас. Тому їздимо та винищуємо ворога.
FH-70 – незвичайна причіпна гармата. У гаубиці є власний двигун, завдяки якому вона може самостійно пересуватися на невеликій відстані до 20 кілометрів.
Тут сідає помічник наводчика. Да, тут заводиться вона. Своє. І от це його речах, він їде. Їде, повертає право-ліво. Задні колеса повертають і все.
Яку швидкість розвиває?
Ну, 16 км в годину.
Ну, тобто вистачає так?
Ну, так, заїхати, переїхати вистачає.
Oh, man, I just saw this. They're swinging the gun around. You know, they're pretty much preparing it to fire. And you see this one guy over here who's got some kind of a pole attached to the muzzle brake of the FH-70, and he's just getting dragged about halfway through. So let's watch that again. Like his feet are just sliding through the ground, and he's trying to stop it from just flying away.
Точність вона доходить до того, що перший снаряд падає біля цілі десь приблизно 50-60 метрів. Тобто з такою точністю можна з другого снаряду вже, з другого пострілу влучати в ціль. Тобто росіянам це дуже не подобається, тому що в нас БК йде дуже мало на цілі. І ми маємо перевагу перед ними в тому, що ми відпрацьовуємо дуже швидко. Росіяни поки відправлять в штаб інформацію, що по ним ведеться вогонь, поки вони відпрацюють цю інформацію, поки подадуть установки для стрільби, ми вже по ним відпрацювали, то поїхали.
That's a nice gun, actually. It's a really nice one. And it's, of course, great to know that the Italians have provided a decent amount of arms and equipment to the Ukrainians, and also courtesy to Radio Free Europe for providing us with this footage. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip. And of course, I would like to say this real quick. If y'all are experiencing some stream connectivity issues, I'm terribly sorry about that. Our internet is once again a little splotchy tonight, and so we are having some issues with it. I think we're having some pretty sizable issues, but hopefully not too much to interrupt the stream. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip of Location Unknown News, where we can see a little interception occur. This is from the inside of a Ukrainian anti-air vehicle. We don't know exactly what kind. It could be an OSA, could be a Strela 10, not the Strela manpad. We're not exactly sure, but here's the video of them intercepting a Russian aircraft or some kind of Russian object.
Азимут 100! Дальность! 800-200! Розрахунок пуск по першому! Есть ход! Есть ответ по першому! Есть огонь среди луч!
You see the missile on its way, streaking through the sky, and they got it!
I love the hype after they hit something.
Ціль падає!
Yeah.
Азимут 95! Дальность! 2800!
I gotta say, it's absolutely impressive to see the Ukrainian armed forces continuing to shoot down Russian missiles day after day, and also Russian drones, aircraft, and helicopters. They shoot all of them down one by one, largely piecemeal, but still it's great to see that they are always shooting down some kind of Russian aircraft, because for the most part, beyond things like the Orlan 10 and the Shahed, most of them are irreplaceable. The Russian industry no longer has the ability to gear itself to produce these pieces of equipment, mostly because of the sanctions not allowing in the kind of technology that would be needed to make more of them. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next clip of Location Unknown News, where we can see a Buk intercepting a Shahed. And this is also a pretty nice video of Ukrainian air defenses working pretty tirelessly today. And so, without further ado, here's the video of this beautiful Buk. And that is incredibly copyrighted. We can see it lining up the missile, and we can see it firing and on its way. We see them turning away to get out of the plume of smoke. And we can see them turning back. And we can see right out there that the missile exploded. And we can also see a decent amount of explosive fragments and pieces, letting us know that whatever it hit had an explosive on it. And there are very, very, very few Russian, I guess you could say, aircraft in general that have explosives built into them like that. One would be a cruise missile, the other would be the Shahed, and it looks like they most likely got a Shahed. with that, we're going to let the video end. And of course, everyone's saying that I'm saying something else when I say Shahed. But I promise y'all, it's not that. It's something else. And so with that, we're going to be moving into the next clip of Location Unknown News, where we can see that the Ukrainians are using some bomblets once more. When you see them dropping the bomblet onto the Russian tank, it's kind of in slow motion. That's weird. For some reason, I thought it was in full speed first time I watched this. We can now see the bomblet hit the rear side, the rear right side of the tank, more so on the engine bay. And now we can see that that was enough. It didn't cause any detrimental damage to the tank, but that was enough to make the crew bail. As you can see right here, we can see the commander and the gunner climbing out and taking a run. And I haven't seen the driver yet, but his hatch is open. We now see another bomblet hit, this time more towards the front of the turret, and the video ends there. We never saw the driver bail out, but I am assuming he probably bailed out with the rest of the crew, considering the first bomblet hit in an area where the shrapnel most likely, well, certainly didn't get the driver. If anyone, it would have gotten the commander. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip, but of course, it's always nice to see the Ukrainians starting the Russians off on a 10K marathon. Into the next clip, we can also see a Ukrainian helicopter flying low overhead over some Ukrainian forces using a car, which is, of course, a really cool thing to see. Of course, we got to mute it. But you can see the first Mi-8 flying over. And then... Come on, number 2. There should be a number 2 in this video, I believe. There we go. There's number 2 flying on over with the Ukrainian colors clearly on it. And with that, that's the end of the video. But it's great to see that the Ukrainians are still using their Mi-8s, and there's still some in existence. Of course, the Russians claim that daily they destroy about half of Ukraine's helicopter force every single day, so it's always a bit of a question of, is there really any Ukrainian helicopters left? Because we know that they lie, but at the same time, you would think that the Ukrainians are taking some kind of attrition to their very small helicopter force, yet to this day, they are still flying and in operation. And of course, a huge credit to these Ukrainian pilots. Mi-8s, by no means, are the most advanced and modern attack helicopter. In fact, they're not even an attack helicopter. They're a utility helicopter meant to transport troops. But the fact that the Ukrainians have rigged these things up, like some are, to be a semi-attack helicopter and have used them with such courage and bravery over the 8 months of the war is an impressive thing to see. And I have to give huge credit where it's due to these Ukrainian helicopter pilots. They have been a major part of this war. Moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown News, we can also see a little bit of Scooby-Dooby-Doo going on. And y'all will know what I mean when you see this. Yep. It's pretty obvious now what this is. And so with that, here's the video. Also, we're going to have to mute it because that's not the Scooby-Dooby-Doo theme song. But when you see a Ukrainian tank driving up onto a Russian Scooby-Doo van, and I don't think Scooby-Doo and the gang are going to be getting back anywhere anytime soon. We've seen them trying to do their best to take out the Scooby-Doo van. They've gotten the back of it, so Scooby is now gone. But the rest of the gang up front, well, the rest of the gang's now got an open sunroof. They mostly got it. I would have to say, if that Scooby-Doo van had to ever run again, they most likely would have a slight problem. Most likely with the rear axle, but an auto repair shop ought to be able to fix that quickly. And so with that, Raggy, we are on to the front. Raggy, retard, or whatever it was. Anyways, we are on to our final clip of Location Unknown News, where we can see the Ukrainians taking down a Ka-52. This one was actually made last deliberately because, of course, save the best for last, and we can see here that the Ukrainians did a pretty good job taking this one down. Of course, Fortunate Son playing again in the background, and we can see this Buke getting ready to fire. We now see the Buke firing off its missile. Missile traveling on its way. Now downrange. And it's still going. It's still going. And it got it. And there we have it. The picture of the wreckage of the Ka-52. And of course, the Russians only have about 103 Ka-52s in service. And we've seen, as far as we know, a large majority of them get destroyed, around 50, maybe 60, maybe even more. We don't really know the exact number, yet we do know that it's at least more than half, and we've seen that another one, probably incredibly rare and very precious to the Russians at this point, get destroyed in a ball of flame by none other than another Buk. Of course, we've ratted on the Russians that have used the Buks before, and the reason being is that the Russians, of course, declare that they are a world superpower, the second best, only second to the United States. But as we've seen this war go on, it's become quite clear and quite evident that they have pretended to be second best, but they're really about 10th, 12th, or 13th best, and at least they do have credit of being second best somewhere. They are the second best military inside of Ukraine right now. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of the location unknowns, but of course, some pretty interesting stuff to see, but sadly, we can't really ascertain where it was on the front lines and where that exactly occurred. Still, it is good to see that the Ukrainians are still walloping the Russians and making them pay for the atrocities that they've been committing over these 8 months of war. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the northeastern area and also the Donbas in its entirety. But before we get there, it is time for us to take a quick pause and address some of our polls and also some super chats. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks. And for our first question segment, we only have one poll this time. And the poll says, does it seem like the Russians are starting to make their propaganda clearly fake? It looks like 56% said yes, the dubbed audio is so bad. 34% said no, it's fake as usual. And 9% said somewhat. So for me, I think the dubbed audio is becoming more frequent. And that is just absolutely horrible attempt at like trying to make it seem more intense than it actually is. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I would have to say, if I had to pick one, it's a pretty tough option, Matthew. I don't know about you, but it's seeming pretty tough to me. I would have to say that it's dubbed audio, most likely. But then again, I can be wrong. It could be authentic, of course. But I'm just kidding, of course. The dubbed audio is pretty bad. Because one, if it was not dubbed, you would hear, if they were under fire, bullets ricocheting off the ground or at least whizzing over. We've seen enough firefight videos to know that if the fire is that heavy in volume, it will be hitting somewhere around the cameraman, and he will hear that. And we didn't hear none of it. And so that leads me to believe, obviously considering that the kid fired an RPG, and that would give away a position better than anything, that audio's dubbed in, because we would have heard the bullets bouncing off the ground. And we also would have seen all of those kids and, of course, pretty much the instructors with them take some kind of cover that they never did. And so with that, I hope that addresses the poll fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so that was our only poll for the first question segment, but many more will be coming. Excuse me. Up first, we have a super chat from My Left Foot, who puts in a $100 donation and says, "Please pick a question from the chat." Yiwa.
And thank you so much for the massive amount of support, My Left Foot. Of course, I always enjoy the use of My Left Foot, and of course, it helps us out a massive deal. And thank you so much for helping out this channel, because through y'all's support, we're able to keep this thing running. Of course, not to give the whole spiel, because we give the spiel a pretty good bit, but we don't run ads on the streams. Also, just wanted to let y'all know this. I think this is time to say it, because this is something that will have to change soon. The Ukrainian anthem, the intro anthem that we use, has now finally been copyrighted. I don't know the exact person who has copyrighted it, but it is their song, apparently. I did try and do a little bit of looking today, but sadly, I couldn't find the exact version I was looking for. But YouTube now says it is copyrighted, and so we're most likely going to have to phase that intro, the intro song out within the next few days. Probably not immediately. It'll stay around for a little while longer. But of course, if you go back to other videos, due to copyright claims being made on our older videos that had that anthem in it, which is pretty much all of them, you will actually see that there are now ads being run on them. That's not by our choice. That's because the copyright claimant is putting ads on our videos, sadly. But of course, it is their song in a way, so we'll make sure to switch that one out, unfortunately. But man, I love that intro. It was the coolest one ever. We'll try and find one that is as good. But of course, one can only dream. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And of course, because of that, getting back to what I was saying, we don't run any ads. So if you go back to any other videos and you see that, that's the reason why. We only run ads on our normal videos, and those come up very rarely. So the only way that we support this channel is through y'all support, through a super chat. We don't have a PayPal, and we also don't have a Cash App. I think that's the other one. I think PayPal is the most popular. We don't have any of those, so the only support we get is directly through the live chat. And so I thank you so much once again for your support, My Left Foot. It helps us out massively, and it helps us to keep this stream running. And so with that, we're now going to address a live chat question in your honor. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew? Hello?
Right, and that live chat question goes to Richard Parnell, who says, yes?
Oh, I thought...
Can you hear me?
Oh, wait a minute. There must be a massive audio lag or something, because
Enforcer,
I said...
can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me? Testing, testing.
Enforcer?
Oh, no. Things are going very south. Oh, yeah. That's bad.
Oh, no.
Let's see. So hang on just a minute, everyone. Apparently, we're having some very bad connectivity issues on...
Can you hear me, Enforcer?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, so I'm back, apparently.
All right. Also, make sure, Matthew, if something like that ever happens, make sure to check your phone, because I will try and send you some messages to see if we regain connection anytime soon. So sorry about that, everyone. But let's get back to the live chat question.
All right, so the live chat question goes to Richard Parnell and says, have you heard that the Ukraine has developed their own long-range drone up to 1,000 kilometers, allegedly?
Really? I have not heard about that drone. Let's pull it up real quick. Ukrainian long-range drone. I feel like it wouldn't be too difficult to make. A lot of countries have been making some long-range drones, but denied attack. Ukraine says it's developing a 1,000-kilometer range weapon to strike Russia. So it is some kind of a drone. There's a picture of a Shahed, and according... Oh, no, there's the terrible ads. There's the terrible ads. Of course, news article. You know something I've actually realized, Matthew, is that a lot of these news places have some pretty freaking weird ads. Also, something else, in case y'all didn't know, because I find this one funny. In case if y'all watched a certain trial, not getting political here, but if you watched a certain trial of a certain news, news channel, in a way, on the internet, that was being put on trial for defamatory comments, you would see that they also talked about the ads that were run on that one. Anyways, the Eurasian Times says the Ukrainians are in the process of developing one, but it appears that it hasn't made it in that phase of development enough to be able to have a picture of it showing what it looks like, or really anything more than its basic qualifications of range and ability. And so with that, I hope also... no, we're getting a lot of weird comments in live chat, Matthew. But with that, I hope that addresses comment fairly well. I haven't heard about it. It looks like it's most likely going to be in its early phases of development, and so we could probably expect that thing to be pushed into service or produced probably in a year's time. A little less or a little bit more. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball. They might be rushing its production, of course, due to obvious reasons, but I'm not entirely sure. And so with that, thank you so much once again for sponsoring a live chat, My Left Foot, because I always enjoy My Left Foot. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and moving right along, up next we have a $20 super chat from Kaltenberg, who says very simply, Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support. It, of course, helps out our channel a whole load. And, of course, without y'all, this wouldn't be possible. And so, Slava Ukraini. And thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep the thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and the next one goes to John L., who says, he puts in a $20 donation. I almost forgot to mention that. But John says, have you heard of Mati tactics invented by Finland during the Winter War when Russia tried to invade Finland in 1939? Ukraine used Mati tactics to destroy the column of Russian tanks headed to Kyiv at the start of the war.
Hang on. Mati, I'm sure that's spelled M-O-T-T-I. Mati tactics. Right. So let's check that out real quick. Let's see. So Mati. Let's see. Mati is a masculine given name, sometimes a short form of Mordecai or Mordechai. I've never heard that one before. And a surname which may refer to all of these things. We're trying to find the Finnish strategy here. So let's see if we can find it. A lot of Israeli guys are called Mahdi. Interesting. Well, where in the world is it? Hang on. Apparently there's a Mahdi in Star Wars. But let's go back. Hang on. Here we go. Mahdi is a Finnish military slang for totally encircled enemy unit. The tactic of encircling is called a motitus, I believe, literally meaning the formation of an isolated block or mati, but in effect meaning an entrapment or an envelopment. The word means mug in many Finnish dialects. An alternate translation refers to a cubic meter of firewood. A relatively small area in which an encircled enemy could be cut down like trees. Cheese! That's hardcore sounding. What are y'all doing, Finland? Oh, yes, we encircled the enemy so we can cut them down like trees. Cheese. Mahdi is thus related
The Finnish are savage.
The Finnish are savage. Also, if you ever look into their military history and the Winter War particularly, they were savage. There's no reason on paper they should have won, much like Ukraine shouldn't have lasted 8 months so far into this war, but still, they had the determination and I guess you could say the grit to really give it to the Russians. If you look at the Winter War, it was a horrendous defeat, and we might try and make a video on that in the future, but Mahdi is thus related to a Kessel, which is also an encirclement, and I believe, if I'm correct, that's most likely a German term for encirclement. Yep. Let's see. Encirclement. Oh, so that's pretty much just the nice word for encirclement is Kessel. Anyways, I did not hear about that specific name for an encirclement, but I did know that in the Finnish Winter War, it was common for the Finns to just outmaneuver the Russians. One thing that really slowed down the Russians there was their use of armored vehicles, which would slow down a large mass of their units because of the winter weather, mostly making them unusable, of course, because they would get bogged down in the terrain. But because of that, the Finns were able to encircle the Russians rather quickly, sometimes a little bit quickly than the Soviets would expect. And so the whole unit would get encircled and practically destroyed, much like we saw here. They would cut them down like trees. So I did not hear about that specific tactic, but I guess you could say that the Finns were into finishing their enemies. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. Hope you all enjoyed that one. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we'll be moving on into the next bit of news.
All right. And I know some of you have heard it being said, but if you want to win, guess what you do? You hire a Finn. That's what they always say. So apparently it's true according to the Wikipedia page there. But anyways, up next, we have a $30 super chat from Praise Adonai, who says, Enforcer and Matt, Russia may be retreating from Kherson in order to drop a WMD or worse in Kherson. How probable would this be? The news from Kherson has been blocked and the situation could be a trick. What do you think?
I would have to say that I believe from what I've heard, and of course all of this here is not really backed up by picture or video evidence, so it's really of course to this channel's rules, really more than speculation. We don't really know who's being evacuated. I've heard that it's only Russian collaborators and sympathizers that are being evacuated, and I've also heard that the entirety of the civilian population of Kherson is being evacuated as well. I don't know which is the case. It's either one or the other. It's kind of a 50-50 split. I have a feeling that logistically it would be a lot easier to just take the collaborators and move them out instead of everyone. So I feel like I will lean more towards that direction. And the reason why, and of course leaning towards that direction, we'll address two of them. Leaning towards the direction I'm thinking of, they're most likely evacuating them because they know the area is about to be lost, and they also want to make sure that their other collaborators around the rest of the country get shown that there is some kind of a positive side to being a collaborator, that the Russians will give them benefits, kind of like a Chuhoi program. And so that's probably the reason why they're evacuating them if it's only the collaborators. If they're evacuating everybody, that is a great question that I unfortunately could not answer. Of course, it could be suggesting that they will use a weapon of mass destruction of some sort, and they may be trying to mitigate civilian casualties, but once again, the Russians have never made an attempt so far, either on their own side or in Ukraine, to mitigate civilian casualties. So I feel like it would almost be out of character for them to do that, to drop a weapon of mass destruction. So I'm not really sure if it's suggesting that. Maybe they're trying to kidnap them and depopulate this entire area of Ukraine just for, I guess you could say, economic purposes in the future, but I'm not entirely sure. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. Of course, a really good question, but unfortunately, I can only answer it one way, because by that way, it has a logical conclusion. But by the other way that I just mentioned, it has a lot of gray area as to why they would be doing that. And so with that, I hope that addresses the question. And now with that, we're going to be moving on into the next segment of news in the Donbas. Starting off farthest northeast in the area of, and oh man, we're going to go with this one, Naholny. Hopefully I pronounced that one correctly. Where we can see that the Ukrainian soldiers reacted to an ambush. What in the world was I saying right there? A ambush. That is just grammatically incorrect. Of course, Matthew and me never make that kind of mistake. And of course,
I saw that comment.
Yeah,
I saw that.
Yeah, we were both browsing through the comments today, and we saw that one person say, "Come on, don't be grammatically incorrect." And I've been doing that the whole time. Sorry, everyone. But anyways, here's the video.
Russian positions are just.
Ooh. Wait a minute, hang on. We're going to have to mute this because it is BBC's. We don't want to fall out of the perimeter of fair use. So we see that the man says Russian positions are just 500 meters away. You can now see that they're getting. And they say that the village has been liberated in eastern Ukraine. It's now the front line. We see the Ukrainian soldiers continuing to move. We now see them getting down. We can see them now getting in a firefight with the Russians. They've now fired a grenade into the tree line, and the Russians are firing at them probably from several hundred yards away. We haven't really seen the position that the Russians are at all too well, but we can now see the Ukrainians withdrawing from the area now that they've come under fire, and of course there's a reporter with them, so they don't really want to get involved in a long, drawn-out firefight with a reporter there. They're now getting on out of there. The Ukrainians, of course, covering fire. They're still on their way. We can now see them covering the position. You can see the reporter telling us that they are taking out firing positions. And with that, that's the end of the video. But an interesting look at some Ukrainian armed forces on the front lines. And of course, showing the bravery that they have to come under fire. And then, of course, keep their cool to make sure that they don't get the reporter in any danger either. Of course, they are probably just taking him on a tour of the front. And so coming under fire isn't exactly the most ideal thing for a reporter to go through. But, you know, it is what it is. Moving on down into the next village of Honcharivka, we can see that the 44th Artillery Brigade also hit the Russians as well. This time, of course, we can see in the caption, hitting 2 Russian tanks, an armored personnel carrier, a Kung trailer, and a BMP-3. Quite the list, and so let's check it out. Looks like the first artillery rounds are on point. The second, third, and fourth artillery rounds are also on point as well. We can now, oh, look at that. They're showing that cool little Russian flag again with the cooked double-headed eagle. We now see another Russian vehicle on fire in the tree line. Of course, destroyed by the artillery. Looks like a Tiger armored car. You now see one of the Russian tanks being hit by artillery. When you see even more artillery fire coming down. And with that, that's the end of the video. But of course, huge credit to the 44th Artillery Brigade for showing us some of their successes that they've been having in the Northeast and helping to push back the Russians bit by bit. Right now, the front lines are largely in a stall. They have not moved a lot from what we've been able to tell, but the Ukrainians are still inflicting Russian casualties at a pretty significant rate. We have not heard of any news, however, in the areas in between Svatove and Kremena. It appears that this area of the front line has not had any information to report for now and may have fallen stagnant for the meantime. However, moving in the direction of Lysychansk, we've seen that an Estonian-provided drone is helped out with guiding the artillery towards a massive Russian logistics convoy. And so let's check it out in its mission to help destroy Russian logistics, which is probably the most important part of the front line. When you see the Russian logistics vehicles moving on along, We can now see that they're pulling over into a, I guess you could say, kind of a siding. It's really just more on the road still. See the drones still eyeballing them. Of course, the Russians not really knowing that they are in peril's way. And now the first rounds begin to fall, taking out the first Russian supply truck of the, I guess you could say, the haul, the catch, the hunt. And we're now going through more internet issues, Matthew, so if you can't hear me, that's the reason why.
I can.
Oh, good, good. You now see the Russian supply truck continuing to burn as the rest of the vehicles appear to have not moved. We can even see that another one was destroyed off camera right then, and the other logistics truck is also having some small explosions occurring inside of it. We now see more artillery explosions occurring on the logistics unit. And it looks like that might be the occasional rocket firing off out of a supply truck. As Matthew would say, spicy. And it also looks like that rocket hit right onto a railroad track, probably damaging the railroad ties if the Russians were using it. And with that, that's the end of the video, but of course, it's nice to see that the Ukrainians are still turning Russian supply convoys into pulled orc. With that, we're now going to be moving on into our next clip of news further down the front line and in the area of Vyimka, although we don't know if this marker is exactly accurate or not, and it was made that way for a purpose. But here we can see that the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade has also been conducting its own bit of a special counter-offensive operation in the area. And so, without further ado, here's the video.
Там носят все впаде. Слухаємо виходи. Виход!
The artillery round landed close nearby.
Быстро!
He's now getting back up. They hop in the car, and brand placement Isuzu. They're on their way now.
Быстро! Быстрее, быстрее!
And with that, that's the end of the video, but it's nice to see that the Ukrainian armed forces are, of course, smart whenever there's an artillery barrage, and duck instead of run. Running is probably not the greatest thing to do, and also, someone did just say that this is old footage, and for some reason, I did feel like it was. And so, I think this is probably old, but still, a nice one to see. Sorry about that, everyone. But with that, we're now going to be moving even further down the front lines from that area and towards the direction of Soledar and Bakhmut, where we can see some Ukrainian forces inside their trenches in the area.
Так, викупаємо підерів.
You can see the Ukrainians inside their trench, looking over the top with some binoculars and also with their camera. And is that a DP-28 right there? It is. That is the magazine of a DP-28. Quite an old gun, but it looks like the Ukrainians have been using it fairly well. Well, a fairly large amount.
Позасідали, піздують по нам отрабатують. Зараз ми будемо включати кулемет. Зараз з оптики видивляємося, засікаємо і будемо відпрацьовувати.
And with that, that's the end of the video. But it's great to see that Ukrainian armed forces are continuing to hold the line in the Bakhmut area. And of course, to take a quick little look at what they're experiencing in the trenches, literally. And so with that, talking about the situation on the front line in between Bielorivka and all the way down to Bakhmut, we have not seen the Russians or the Ukrainians making any large or meaningful advances in this area. I believe that I have heard that the Russians apparently have created some new trench line somewhere in the area of Pokrovsk, but sadly, we haven't gotten enough news to change this front line yet due to video and picture evidence. So for now, we won't be able to change that front line at all. But by and large, very small amounts of front line ground is being covered either by the Ukrainians or the Russians, and it doesn't appear that any massive offensives are occurring at this moment. And so we'll now be moving out of the area of Luhansk and further down into the Donetsk region and past Orlivka to the town of Verkhnotoretsk, or Troitske, where we saw a Ukrainian sniper take out 3 Russians on their infrared camera. So without further ado, here's the video. Of course, no audio, but we can see through the sniper's scope as he eyes out some pretty heated targets in the field. We now see him lining up the crosshair, firing. And I did not see that Russian go down, although I think he did. We can now see another highlighted target, of course, further down range. I know someone's about to say, it's not highlighted. It is heat. I made a little bit of a misspeaking there. And we now see that that guy appears to have also gone down, and the sniper is now ready to pick another one. We now see the third guy. I believe he's right there, if I'm correct. Now the sniper is moving on further down the line, and our video had a little bit of a pause there. We now see him still sizing up that specific spot, and now you can see that it is too has disappeared, most likely for a nap. So with that, that's the end of the video, and it's impressive to see that this single sniper in this one film put 3 Russians to sleep. Of course, I say that for YouTube reasons, but with that, it's still nice to see that Ukrainian snipers are competent enough that in some places they do about as much damage as the drones. And so with that, we're now going to be moving even further down the line into the area of Vesely, which is also near Pisky, where we saw that some white phosphorus strikes have been conducted somewhere on the outskirts of Donetsk city, close to the front lines. Here we can see the white phosphorus raining down. And surprisingly enough, we don't really know who did this. We have seen the Ukrainians and the Russians use white phosphorus. Of course, the Russians a lot more than the Ukrainians, but we're not really sure who did this at this point. Still, if it is in a residential area, this could be burning civilians, and that in its own right is a war crime. And so with that, that's the end of the video, but it is interesting to see that the Ukrainians or the Russians have used white phosphorus in this area. We don't know exactly what was there. We can't really see exactly where it was falling. We can see residential buildings in front of us in the video, but I don't really know if there's any further back there where that fell. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news in Donetsk and on into our next bit further down the line and all the way in the Dnipro city area. And of course, this marker is not entirely accurate, but it did occur somewhere inside of Ukraine near a large power plant. But before we get there and address that news, of course, it is everyone's favorite moment. We have to take a quick pause to address some polls and also 3 questions from the chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and this time we have 2 polls to address, and the first one said, do you think that Putin is preparing to use a WMD? A question that's on a lot of people's minds, and it looks like 41% said yes, it's possible, 23% said maybe, and 36% said no, it's just fear-mongering. Now, on this one, I'm going to have to sort of take the cop-out option and say maybe, because I'm not really sure. But Enforcer, what do you think?
Could you reread the poll for me real quick? Because I was looking at the live chat. Someone said that footage was from Aleppo. And real quick, to go back and look, I'm fairly certain it wasn't, because we could see vegetation, and vegetation is a little bit rare in Syria. So let me go back real quick and let's make sure about that. Yes, there are trees in the distance, and you don't get forests like that in Syria. So I just had to make sure. So could you reread that poll to me real quick, Matthew?
All right. So the question was, do you think that Putin is preparing to use a WMD? 41% said it's possible, 23% said maybe, and 36% said no, it's just fear-mongering.
I would have to go with the 36% that say it's most likely fear-mongering. I am, of course, not a big fan of the Russians using nuclear weapons, and I'm not really a big fan of the concept of them potentially using nuclear weapons either. I don't think it would happen because that has obvious and disastrous consequences for the Russian Federation and the entirety of the world, and I think, while Putin is crazy, that he understands that that would be a losing card to pull, regardless of when it was when the decision was made. And so with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, the second poll said, do you think the declaration by Russia of martial law in the annexed regions will actually change anything? It looks like 61% said no, it's just a political stunt. 15% said I don't know, and 23% said yes, it has a strategic purpose. Now, for me, I think it is a political stunt. I don't really think they really need to declare martial law. It's already mayhem there anyway. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I would have to say, if I had to go with a decision on this, the Russians are most likely declaring martial law for actual reasons. Of course, it may be a little bit of a diplomatic move, but declaring martial law is incredibly serious. And of course, while the Russians don't really have any rights anyways, martial law will strip them of the remainder that they even have, if they have any. And so, going off of that, this decision appears to be one that shows that they are failing in their own minds. The war is starting to fail, and there now needs to be emergency measures made behind the lines to try and quell partisan activity and to also stop the spread of panic and pandemonium amongst the collaborators, and of course the feelings of hope and optimism amongst the occupied pro-Ukrainians, because if they do not try and put a crackdown on this, things could start to fall apart behind the lines a lot faster than they could expect, and they could then see a war being fought in every direction. It would be omnidirectional at that point, as they'd be trying to put down partisans, the Ukrainian armed forces, and also probably some mutinies as well. And so with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, because that was actually a pretty interesting one. And if we have any other polls, we'll cover those as well. And if not, we are on to the questions.
All right, so that was the last poll. So moving on to our super chats, we have a very generous $100 donation from Terrace McGitts, who says, hello, gentlemen. What do you think the map will look like when the media blackout ends? I love what you do and will continue to spread the word about your channel. Hit the like button and subscribe. No one else has better stream. Slava Ukraine, 612.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support, Terrace McGitts. Megitz? I hope, please, Megitz, I believe it is. But I thank you so much for the massive support. Of course, it helps the channel keep running, and without viewers and supporters like y'all, we wouldn't be able to keep this news running every single day, and definitely not in the future. We'll probably tell y'all about that later on. But well, not later on tonight, but probably later on in, like, days or weeks. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. And also, to address that, what do you think the map will look like when the media blackout ends? It will have moved. I can say that. It will move. That's one definitive thing I can say. I can't say exactly what it will look like, because then that may disclose what the Ukrainians are doing right now. And of course, there is a media blackout, and we do not want to disrespect that media blackout whatsoever. Of course, the Ukrainian government has requested it multiple times, and we've always made sure that it will be followed each time the Ukrainians request it, because if otherwise, disastrous results could happen. We do have clips today, though, from the Kherson area, but we made sure that if they did show Ukrainian armed forces, there were no identifying landmarks in any of the videos. It just showed the armed forces of Ukraine. So with that, sadly, I can't really get into what it will look like. I hope you do see where I'm coming from with that. But to move on to the next one, love what you do, and we'll continue to spread the word about your channel, and I thank you so much for that. We try our best to make sure that the news we report is fairly competent. Of course, there is always the occasional discrepancy, and hopefully we correct that on stream before we continue to say it over and over. And sometimes our viewers actually catch us on very good stuff. We usually get caught on new facts and information on nuclear power whenever that rabbit hole comes up. But I thank you so much once again, Terrace, for your support. It means a lot to us, and I thank you so much for saying that you'll spread the word of this channel. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and Slava, the Lee Spring Army. And with that, I thank you. I really do so much for the support. And also, Ukraine 612. I don't know what the 612 stands for, but thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one. And of course, as like the 6th or 7th time I said it, thank you once again.
All right, and next up, we have a $50 super chat from Chip Kerwan, who says, intro says Russia front lines are now beginning to buckle, but Wagner keep trenching deeper at Bakhmut. Plus, Russia forces duly massed at Kherson. What frontline buckling? Sends 2 links for data backup.
Sending 2 links for data backup. Well, thank you very much for the support, Chip Kerwan. I don't think I'll be able to pull up my Discord. Well, actually, I could pull it up on my phone real quick. So let me check that out. Let's see. Let me go here, and so unfortunately, I don't see the message as of right now. Let me check some other stuff here real quick though. Hang on 1 second, everyone. Those don't appear to be it. So sadly, I haven't seen those in my Discord DM yet. But to answer that question, the Russian front lines have been in a constant state of buckling for about the past month and a half at this point. Of course, in the northeastern area, we've seen them buckle the fastest with the Ukrainian, I guess you could say, a large push from north of Balaklia towards Volokhiv Yar, where we saw that the Russians went to a full rout just about a couple of hours later, and then the Ukrainians were practically chasing them across the plains in that area. The Russians have also buckled in the Kherson area, and while the progress down here is not as fast as in others, 1, because the Russian forces are in larger numbers in this area, and 2, because the Ukrainians seem to be focusing more of their efforts in weaker spots of the front lines, it also, Smell My Finger said something, that is true, and I generally avoid clicking on links the best I can, but anyways, moving back to this, the front lines in this area are buckling a lot slower than in the northeast, and so relatively, it would look like they're not buckling much at all. But when you really look at the Russian position here, and we see that the Russians have most of their forces, if anywhere, in the Kherson area from what we know, it is showing that their logistical situation, the supply side of things, is incredibly poor. And of course, you can have 100,000 soldiers in a single field, and if only 3 of them have a rifle, that means you really only have 3 effective infantrymen, and then you of course get into normal gear, supplies, food, and everything else. And so, by and large, the Russian front lines are buckling not because of a lack of manpower, but more so because of a lack of supplies, and then also the Ukrainians make sure to deal with the manpower factor a little bit later. And so that is why we are saying that the Russian front lines are buckling in the description, and it seems that they will continue to, although the Ukrainians have taken a pause in some areas like the northeast, most likely to regain their, I guess you could say, supply numbers. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, but on this one, trust me, bro. Trust me. the Russian front lines are buckling. And so with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we'll be moving on into the last bit of news.
All right, and for the final one of the segment, we have a $20 super chat from Oats Air, who says, did you hear that Finland has greenlit a plan to build a 350-kilometer long fence at the Russian border? It will be built as sections at the most probable crossing points like fields and roads.
And I thank you so much for the support, Oysair, and of course, you've been helping out this channel massively, and you are also a Lee Spring Army veteran. And to answer that question, I have not heard about the Finns doing that, but that is something that a decent amount of countries do at one point or another. If y'all don't know, Poland actually has something like that, a chain link fence border in between them and Belarus, which actually came in handy when Lukashenko tried to pull this whole entire stunt with bringing in Syrian migrants and then trying to send them into Poland, mostly to try and burden their financial system in a way due to some petty stuff that happened in between Poland and Belarus. That has come to benefit before, and the Finns are most likely going to try and stop either Russian spies or the ne'er-do-well Russian citizen from crossing the border into Finland unnoticed until much later. And so I have not heard about that, but I do think it is a pretty decent move from the Finns concerning the current situation in between them and the Russians, and also the fact that Finland is joining NATO. It does seem to be a pretty decent idea, to say the least. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support always there. It helps out this channel greatly, and I thank everyone who supported this channel tonight, because of course without y'all support, we aren't able to keep this thing running. And so with that, we've now rounded out this question segment and also the polls, and now it's time to move on into Dnipro. And of course, before we do, it's worth mentioning that there has been no activity on the southern front line whatsoever. It appears that nothing is really happening down there by and large. Of course, as usual, this area is the quietest that there has ever been in the war. I don't think there will be a large amount of activity here for months, if any. It will most likely start happening towards the very later phases of the war, and most likely will be Ukrainian in its origin. But moving on into Dnipro, we did see that the Ukrainians intercepted another missile right before it hit a power plant, which was incredible to see, and good to know that they caught it right in the nick of time. And so, without further ado, you can kind of see it right here while this video loads. Our internet is doing poorly, and our Matthew's voice connection is still incredibly terrible on my end, but here's the video. When you see that one missile has already hit the power plant, and when you see another one coming in, right there, and it got hit and shot down before it could do any damage to the power plant.
Wow, that was a good hit.
That was a good one, and a really close call. If it had just traveled on a little bit longer, it would have certainly gone into its downward angle and attacked the power plant and most likely hit it. So the Ukrainians were pretty fast acting and shooting down that one, but unfortunately another one did make it through and hit the power plant. Moving on into the next bit of news outside of Dnipro, and of course, just to keep this in mind, attacks against civilians in Ukraine are still ongoing to this very moment. The Russians have not ceased. We'll also be covering that in Mykolaiv and Kyiv a little bit later on. The footage from Kyiv, though, is a couple of days old, but brand new. Moving on down into Enerhodar, however, we have seen that the Ukrainians are using their HIMARS to try and strike at Russian administrative centers, specifically the city council building in Enerhodar, and we can see them obliterate the city council building right here in this clip. There's the city council building. And there goes the city council building. It seems that the Ukrainians are starting to get the hang of the whole HIMARS thing, and we can now see it get hit a second time. And so with that, that's the end of the video, and it's really nice to see that, in fact, the Ukrainians are using the HIMARS quite well. I don't think anyone can argue that one anymore. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this clip and on into the next outside of Enerhodar. But of course, the Enerhodar City Hall is of course one thing to note to real quick address this. Enerhodar is the town, the atomic town that is attached to the Zaporizhzhia power plant. But if we go down here and we take a look at this building, I mean, you see that it's almost in the farthest direction away from the Zaporizhzhia power plant that one could get while still being in Enerhodar. It's on the very other side of the city. And so with that, it's good to know that the Ukrainians are attacking Russian targets inside of Enerhodar, but they're also not putting the power plant in jeopardy by striking nearby to it, which we have seen the Russians fire rockets and missiles into that direction, and we've also seen them try and come up with very convoluted stories as to why they came from the direction of Russian forces. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the Enerhodar area and into our final frontline segment of the night, starting in the Kherson area. With our first clipping, you see that Ukrainian soldiers were advancing in some part of the front line with a Max Pro, otherwise known as an MRAP. You see Ukrainian soldiers following the MRAP like a mother goose, and we can see the MRAP firing off its machine gun towards the front. That guy's laugh was pretty good. Hang on, we got to go back and listen to that laugh because that was really good. That was classic. Oh man, his laugh, it was like a little evil maniacal laugh. Like he's like, let's listen to it one more time. I love it.
I think that's the cameraman laughing.
I think it is. But the other guy also, he's got some moves. Look at this guy. That's a good one. I like it. We can see the MRAP backing up, but providing fire as they continue to pull back quite slowly. So with that, that's the end of the video, but it's pretty interesting to see that the Max Pro, otherwise known as the MRAP, or, well, I guess you could say kind of like an MRAP relative, laying down some decent fire against those sweet little Russians. Of course, it appears that they are withdrawing or retreating. I'm not exactly sure why. It doesn't look like they're under heavy fire at all. It may be because they found out that the road ahead is not suitable enough for the MRAP to cross, but once again, that's entirely speculation and assumption on my end. We're not really sure why. But moving on into the next clip from the Kherson area, and this one is in Chernovy Yar. We can confirm that. We saw that a Russian Mitsta got blown away. And so, without further ado, here's the video. We cannot play that music, but we can see the Mista B going up right there. We can also see another one going up right there. And I believe we'll see the third one go up. Nope, that's just the two. But two Mista S's. Russia's best SPG system knocked out of the war again. I gotta say, quite nice. And so with that, that's the end of that video. And of course, we can locate that one to a specific spot because it is Russian. And we always want to give away the positions of the Russians if we can. Moving on into the next clip of news, we can also see that the Ukrainians were dropping some bomblets onto the Russians in the Kherson area as well. We're going to have to mute that because it does have music. And we see the bomblet on its way and hitting right near that Russian tank. I can't really tell which direction the tank is oriented in. It looks like it's more left. The rear is to the left side of the screen. The front is to the right. We can see that that bomblet did hit dead on, but we can't tell what kind of damage has been caused yet. Now see another bomblet being dropped and hitting a drainage ditch. We now see even more bombers being dropped. And they're kind of the smaller, it looks like they're made out of an RDG, but I'm not exactly certain. And so with that, that's the end of the video, but it is nice to see that the Ukrainians are still using bomblets with pretty decent effect against the Russians, even the smaller kind like that. Moving even further down the front lines, well, actually, we're going to be moving behind the front lines for a second to show you an interesting video of some Belarusian volunteers crossing the Inhlets River. We don't know exactly where, but one thing we can say is that we don't know. So with that, here's the video.
Have you ever wanted to cross a river with some cool country music playing in the background? Well, you ought to join the Belarusian volunteers. These guys are the rock'em, sock'em, go-get-em kind of guys. The guys that don't take any crap. And we can see them moving the boat from side to side as they use it as a ferry to transport their men from one location to the next. The pulling power of one Ukrainian is enough to pull a whole dinghy of 4 of them, maximizing your horsepower as much as you can, and also, I gotta respect the duck. That duck right there is the sickest duck that I have ever seen.
That duck is just like epic.
Oh man, and it looks like they got some spray paint on the silencer.
We can now see the Belarusians pushing forward down the field, making sure to lay down low, make sure they don't come under fire as they unload the boat. And with that, we can see the epic outro here, of course, of the Belarusian volunteers. And one thing you can guarantee is that if you need a job done, you need to get yourself a Belarusian. And so with that, that's the end of that video right there. And it's great to see that the Belarusian volunteers are continuing their good fight in every single part of the front lines. We've seen Belarusian volunteers all the way from the northeast near Svatove and all the way down to the Inhalish River in Kherson. These guys are the go-get-ems. And of course, I'm going to stop that voice because I don't want that to go on for too long, but I hope y'all enjoyed that fairly well. Anyways, it's great to see, once again, that the Belarusian volunteers have so many contingents of them that we've seen them everywhere. And one thing we can confirm is that there is a Belarusian contingent in the Kherson area. We don't know where Magic Mustache Man is. It looks like he's actually got some competition there in the other video with the artillerist with the FH-70. But still, I would like to know where Mustache Man is. Also, some of y'all have been asking about us bringing on more guest stars, more than just Starsky. And Starsky is an incredible guest star. I love Starsky. Starsky's a great guy. But we have been trying to see about it, and a lot of y'all have been suggesting some of these fellas that we've seen a lot, like Mustache Man, and also what's his name, Matthew? It's he's the American volunteer, Vasquez. A lot of y'all have been asking for us to bring on
Vasquez. Vasquez.
Oh yeah, Vasquez, not Vasquez. We will
Don't forget about that controversy.
Yes. I can't forget about that. But we're going to see about trying to bring on more guest stars in the future. But of course, it is pretty tough to, I guess you could say, coordinate guest stars in a way. Starsky's pretty tough to coordinate because usually when our stream starts, he's sleeping, and we don't want to interrupt him sleeping all the time. But with that, we're now going to be moving further down to the front lines towards the area of Promin, where we saw that the Ukrainians had captured a Russian PKM. And so with that, here's the video. This is, of course, the 28th Mechanized Brigade, and they're always getting the fun stuff down in Kherson, like this PKM. We can clearly see the Z on it, and is that a night vision scope? It is a night vision scope. And those things are kind of pricey, actually. And so with that, that's the end of that little video, and I really like to see that the 28th Mechanized Brigade is continuing to capture some pretty nice stuff as the war goes on. And so with that, that's the end of that little video, but I hope the 28th Brigade continues to do their good work in that part of the country. Also, I can see that a lot of people actually enjoyed the Sam Elliott voice, and of course, don't want to run a poll on it because I know that some people find the voices to be quite aggravating and annoying at times, but I wonder if a video where I talked like Sam Elliott would do well or not. Could you run a poll on that, Matthew?
Of course.
Of course. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the next part of the front line, furthest down to the west, where we see some Ukrainian Marines destroying the Russians. And of course, it's taking a while for the video to load. We still have not really fixed the splotchy internet issues, which is a little unfortunate. And also, we have not fixed the music noises as well. We can now see the Russian vehicle being hit. We don't know exactly what kind it is, but I gotta say, it's pretty interesting to see that they definitely hit it. Huge credit to the naval infantry and the Marines who've been fighting down in the Kherson area. That is mostly where they are. That's one thing that we can always confirm, is that the naval infantry and the Marines are in the area of Kherson, and it's good to see that they're continuing that good fight and knocking out even more Russians. And so with that, also, Heather Fitzgibbon said, don't strain your vocal cords. It's actually the easiest voice for me to do. In fact, it's a lot easier than my normal talking voice that I pull off on stream, which is right now. Moving on into Mykolaiv, however, we do have a bit of unfortunate news. We did see that a Shahed did conduct a strike in the Mykolaiv area just this night. We have the video footage of it right here. And so without further ado, here's the video. Of course, it's somewhat sad to think that this probably attacked in a residential area within the city.
It is.
course, very unfortunate to see, and it's sickening to know that the Iranians have pretty much provided the Russians with the means to conduct as many attacks against the civilians of Ukraine as they wish. And I think that will keep on going until the end of the war, most likely, without really any repercussions for Iran or Iran, is incredibly sickening to think of. And hopefully the United States starts to formulate some kind of punishments for the Iranians, considering that they have now facilitated Russian war crimes. With that, we're now going to be moving all the way up to Kyiv, and the news is not over yet, as we do have a bit of old footage to share from the area of the city of Kyiv, specifically about the 17th of October, where we saw that a large Shahed drone strike was conducted on the city. And we can actually see something quite interesting here that was asked a couple of days ago on stream. Why not equip the Ukrainian police in the city with tracers so that way they can better coordinate their fire and make sure that they lead the target properly? We actually did see in this footage, taken way early in that morning, that the Ukrainian police in fact do use tracers. It looks like a lot of their rounds are tracers, and for that reason, during darker times of the day, like the night, dusk, and dawn, they might be able to actually guide their fire a little bit better. And so here's the video. You see their tracers lighting up the night sky, trying to hit the drone.
What the hell?
He is hell on earth. We see that a lot of these guys are getting really close to the drone, but of course the drone is so small. It's only an 11-foot by 11-foot drone that is flying almost 1,000 or 2,000 feet in the air. It's going to still be incredibly hard to hit. Which is, of course, unfortunate to see, but it is good to know that the Ukrainians have thought ahead, and most of the rounds being fired from these AKs are tracers, and so they are able to see, at least at darker times of the day, where their rounds are traveling. But I think in the daytime, tracers don't burn that bright where you can actually see them all too well. I think it would take a decent amount of, like, 20/20 vision from a lot of people to be able to see those tracers. But, of course, it's good to know that the Ukrainians have equipped them with tracers, so that way they're usable at some point. With that, we have now covered all of the news, and of course, I thank everyone so much before we get to the speech from President Zelensky for hanging in tonight. It's been a pretty rough night, specifically because of the amount of ebbs and flows that we've had with our internet connection. We can even see it on our end, as there will be massive spikes and drops in how many of y'all are here based off of how good our internet's doing. So sorry to everyone who got booted off and then booted back on or had to deal with some lag. Of course, tonight's been a pretty rough night, and sadly, while we would love to try and fix the internet problems, our internet in this specific area is not that good. We've tried our best to figure out some ways to fix it. I promise y'all, we have tried effortlessly to try and find a solution around that matter, but unfortunately, we have not been able to. So I hope y'all have been able to deal with that tonight. Of course, it's a huge bit of a, I guess you could say, annoyance to us, probably as much as it is to y'all. But without further ado, it's now time to get to the speech from President Zelensky here on day 239 of the war, and to wrap up our news segment for the night. And so without further ado, here is the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Українці, українки, сьогодні був доволі продуктивний день. Зустрівся з єврокомісаром з питань гуманітарної допомоги і управління кризовими ситуаціями. Подякував пану Ленарчичу за всю допомогу, що була надана за час повномасштабної війни. Обговорили, які ще гуманітарні потреби нашого народу можуть бути задоволені з допомогою наших європейських друзів. Звичайно, торкнулися енергетичної ситуації. Говорив сьогодні з президентом Туреччини. Подякував за підтримку нашої територіальної цілісності. Обговорили ключові безпекові питання, що постали зараз перед Україною і усім нашим регіоном. Ключові теми – зусилля для подальшого звільнення наших людей з російського полону, оборонна співпраця, експорт українського продовольства. Провів переговори з міністром закордонних справ Греції. Він прибув з візитом у Київ вже втретє за час з 24 лютого. Подякував Греції за підтримку в оборонній сфері. Домовились про посилення нашої взаємодії у двосторонніх відносинах і на рівні Євросоюзу, і також на рівні НАТО. Завтра братиму участь в саміті Європейського Союзу. Звертатимусь до партнерів. Ключова тема, звісно, виклики нашої енергетиці, українській та європейській. Будемо реагувати спільно на терористичну загрозу. Сьогодні ж в офісі відбулася зустріч Андрія Єрмака з представниками посольств Франції, Німеччини, Італії, Нідерландів та Іспанії щодо посилення нашої протиповітряної і протиракетної оборони. Працюємо для того, щоб гарантувати повну безпеку українському небу. Ми вже маємо суттєві результати. Протягом місяця збито 233 шахеди і десятки ракет. Лише за сьогодні, лише на Київському напрямку знищено 10 іранських дронів. Ще 11 шахедів збито завдяки воїнам повітряного командування «Південь». Я дякую, хлопці, за чудову роботу. Є результати і на інших напрямках, але, на жаль, є і влучання, є нові пошкодження критичної інфраструктури. Цієї доби 3 енергетичні об'єкти були знищені ворогом. Звичайно, ми зробимо усе можливе, щоб відновити нормальні енергетичні можливості нашої країни. Але для цього потрібен час. І для цього потрібні наші з вами спільні зусилля. Завтра ще більше, ніж раніше. Будуть роз'яснення і від керівників обласних адміністрацій, від урядовців, але загалом потрібно вже з 7 ранку завтрашнього дня особливо свідомо ставитись до споживання електрики. Будь ласка, не включайте зайву електротехніку. Будь ласка, обмежуйте споживання електрики тією технікою, яка потребує багато енергії. Завтра дуже важливо, щоб споживання було максимально свідомим, тоді і графіки стабілізаційних відключень будуть коротшими. Провів сьогодні загальну нараду з питань енергетики. Офіс, уряд, енергокомпанії. Готуємось до усіх можливих сценаріїв з огляду на зимовий сезон. Виходимо з того, що російський терор буде направлений на енергооб'єкти. Поки за допомогою партнерів не забезпечимо можливість збивати 100% ворожих ракет і дронів. Окремо сьогодні хочу звернутися до наших людей у тимчасово окупованих районах півдня і сходу України. Найближчим часом окупанти намагатимуться забрати чоловіків в свою армію. Всюди, так само як в Донецьку і Луганську. Будь ласка, уникайте цього так, як можете. Намагайтесь виїхати з окупованої території. Якщо ж ви не можете цього зробити і опинитесь в російських військових структурах, за першої ж нагоди намагайтесь скласти зброю і прийти на українські позиції. І головне, бережіть своє життя і обов'язково допомагайте іншим нашим людям, які поруч із вами. Наше спільне завдання – вистояти проти цих неадекватів. Росія півроку цуралася навіть слова «війна», карала за нього своїх же людей кримінальними справами, а тепер сама ж оголошує воєнний стан на окупованих територіях. Окупанти самі принесли війну на нашу землю під свою постійну брехливу тріскатню про нібито переговори, а тепер підписують якісь укази, що закріплюють війну. Ну, що можу сказати? Просто істерика у товаришів чекістів. Істерика, яка буде тим більше, чим ближче буде поразка Росії. Ввечері підписав черговий указ про нагородження наших воїнів. Державними нагородами сьогодні відзначено 71 військовослужбовець Збройних сил України. Дякую кожному і кожній, хто воює і працює заради України. Дякую усім, хто допомагає нашому захисту. І окремо хочу подякувати за те, що саме український народ став цьогоріч лауреатом особливої відзнаки Європарламенту – премії Сахарова. Ця нагорода щорічно вручається тим, хто зробив найбільший внесок у захист демократії, людських прав, європейських цінностей. Дійсно важливо, що у Європі цьогоріч відзначені усі українці і українки, мільйони наших людей, що так сміливо захищають свободу. Слава нашому прекрасному народу. Слава Україні!
And so with that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 239 of the war. And that also wraps up our news segment for the night. If you've enjoyed this news segment, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I thank you so much for watching. Of course, we will be here every single day of the week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine until this war ends. We have always made that as pretty much a promise, of course, except for Mondays, ever since the beginning of the war. And we are going to continue to cover this war until its very end. And so with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching. And we're about to move into the polls and the remaining questions of the night. We'll make sure to answer everyone's super chats and as many live chats as we can get to. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So for the final question segment of the night, we do have one poll to address, And this is one of the closest polls I have ever seen on the channel. The question is, would you like a standalone video of the enforcer covering a topic while doing the Sam Elliott voice? It looks like it's 50-50. Can you believe that? Yes and no.
I cannot believe that, actually. That's literally the most split poll we've ever had. It's switching in between 49 and 51 and 50-50. But right now it looks like the majority of y'all, just a very small amount making up that majority, are leaning towards no. So a little bit sad. I like doing the Sam Elliott voice, of course. It's fun for me to do, gives me a little bit of break from the monotony of just talking the same way in the high-pitched voice. But of course, if half of y'all don't really want it, you know, that's kind of sad. You know, it's also fun to do. But anyways, with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well. And we are on into the next one, if we have one. And if not, we are into the questions.
All right, so that was our last poll for now. So up first from the Super Chats, we have another $50 donation from Chip Kerwan, who says, analysis by UK professor Michael Clark estimates in the next 2 weeks, Belarus could actually deliver max 6,000 bona fide combat-ready, fully trained troops. What big downsides for Russia to try Belarus gambit?
That's a great question. I don't believe... I'm actually going to have you reread that one again, Matthew, because I need to make sure that the answer to this one is well formulated, because that was a great question.
All right, so Chip said, analysis by UK professor Michael Clark estimates in the next 2 weeks, Belarus could actually deliver max 6,000 bona fide combat-ready, fully trained troops. What big downsides for Russia to try Belarus gambit?
All right, so first off, I thank you for the support, and I would have to agree with that professor. I believe that the number would only be around 6,000, because if you look at the Belarusian military, it's not incredibly large, and most of it's more of a paramilitary police force, from what we've been able to tell. So in that regard, it's not going to be a large force that the Belarusians can actually field, and of course, after they take attrition, that force will pretty much diminish into non-existence, especially with the amount of casualties the Russians have been taking. If the Belarusians were to take those kinds of casualties with a force that size, they would be out of the war within probably days, or if not a few weeks at the longest. So with that in mind, I don't think the Russians would want to try this northern offensive. And once again, I hope y'all have noticed this, because I said this a couple of days ago. This whole Belarusian invasion fad will disappear almost as quickly as it popped up. And once again, like it has every time, the Belarusian invasion, I guess you could say, fears have once again disappeared into oblivion. They're not really there, and everyone stopped talking about the Russian forces that arrived in Belarus. It largely appears that they aren't doing anything. So moving on from that, one thing that we already know, and this is something that will limit the Russians and their offensive capabilities into the future, is that they've already failed in the entirety of their southern front line, all the way from the northeast all the way down to Kherson. And mostly because of their logistics. Their logistics have completely fallen apart, and they can't even supply their soldiers with proper equipment, food, and arms. So with that in mind, I would have to say that, considering that their logistics are not even put together in the southeast, it would be practically impossible to try and pull any of their logistical efforts from the southeast or the northeast and send them into Belarus to try and help out up there, because those logistical forces would be almost incomplete, and they wouldn't be able to supply any kind of invading force for long, or even build up any kind of meaningful stockpiles for them to run off of initially. And so for that reason, I believe that the Russians and that gambit will most likely never happen. Just because it's definitely not going to end well for them. The front line that they've had going for about 8 months at this point is already performing poorly, and so trying to open up a brand new one at this point, this late in the war, would most likely not bode them well. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and next up, a big shout out to Robert McIver for putting in a $20 donation, but without a comment. Robert, thank you so much for your support. We do appreciate it very much, and thanks for helping to keep us running. And also, Enforcer, would you like to add a few words?
Yes, I would. I would like to thank you so much for the support as well, for helping out this channel. It, of course, means a lot to us. And without y'all's support, we wouldn't be able to keep the thing running. I don't think a lot of people know, because every once in a while I see someone come through and say something like, oh, you know, he's what's the normal one, Matthew, that a bot would say? profiteering. We do, of course, make money on the streams because this is our job. We do this 50 to 60 hours a week. And so, well, I do. And Matthew also works incredibly hard. Now he's working on videos as well. So we've got a pretty full plate.
I've started working close to that now that I'm working on videos.
Yes. So Matthew and me are working a pretty good deal, making sure to keep this channel running. So it's our full-time job. And because of that, we have to find some way to support ourselves while doing it. And the way we do that is through the super chats. We could run ads, but I think ads are mostly tacky, especially on a live stream like this. I'm not really a big fan of ads on a stream, so we don't run them on a stream. So the only way we can support ourselves is through super chats. Of course, now this is something that I think a lot of people kind of get murkied on the waters on, and I don't know how, because we try and make this as clear as possible. The super chats support Matthew and me and help us to keep on doing this as a job. If you want to support Ukraine through this channel, we run Sunday night fundraisers. We run one every single Sunday ever since we've had the ability to do that once we pass like 10,000 subscribers. So there's about 31 fundraisers that we've run, and we've raised $560,000 in support of Ukraine. All of that money is managed and maintained by YouTube Give. So there's no, and this one really just irks me a lot when people say, oh, he's taking the fundraiser money. We can't even physically touch the fundraiser money. It's in an account managed by YouTube. So that's how, once again, our kind of like monetization works. We don't run ads. We get supported through super chats though. And if you want to support Ukraine on this channel, make sure to show up for the Sunday night fundraiser, because if you put in anything on that night stream, 100% of those funds will go directly to the nonprofit that is listed. And you will see it. It will be below the video, kind of near the description. And so with that, I hope that addresses that once again fairly well. And thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right. And next up, we have a $20 super chat from Chip Kerwan once again. And Chip, thank you very much for the continued support. He says, what chance Ukraine plays it safe this time? At least in Kherson, aren't time plus newly arriving weapons factors, counseling extra caution, or push hardest to cause Russia to narrowly mass forces in North and or Belarus?
I believe that the Ukrainians' next strategy will be to continue their offensives in the south. I think they're most likely going to view the northern buildup as a ruse. I think it most likely is a ruse because obviously it wouldn't make much sense for them to do what they're trying to do, at least what the peers are trying to do with the situation that they currently have in the south. It would be much more beneficial, much more intelligent for the Russians to try and amass all of their efforts in maintaining the ground they have in the south and hope that they can survive this whole thing and gain some ground out of it some way or another. They won't be able to do that. That's already fairly certain. So I think that what the Russians will do and what the Ukrainians will do in result of it is continue to push and retake ground here in the south, most likely in the northeast first. And of course, I'm not going to go into all the details, but it's most likely going to be in the northeast first. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And I think, by and large, to answer the question as best I can in the shortest way possible, they will completely ignore the best they can what's going on in the north in Belarus, because it's most likely just a whole bunch of hot air. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping us to keep this channel running.
All right, and Chip is not done yet. He puts in another $20 donation and says, "No laughing. If Russia runs withdrawal strategically, yuck yuck. To what location does Russia then reposition its forces? In B, the new orc commander seems smarter than his dead and inept predecessors."
And I thank you so much for the support and also the pretty honest comments on the former Russian commanders. And it also looks like we are not really having that bad connectivity issues, although YouTube is telling me, so sorry once again if y'all are going through that. But to explain where they will most likely go, we need to look at the rivers. The rivers are the best form of, I guess you could say, frontline defense there is for the Russians. They are quite difficult to cross, although the Ukrainians didn't have a difficulty crossing the Oskol River. But to move on to this and to answer that question, I think the best defensive line that the Russians could make in the northeast from where they are now would be along this small river. It's almost a stream, really. And I will highlight that for just posterity reasons, so that way we can keep this in mind in the future. And they will most likely try and border the Adar River. Wow, I actually remember that being brought up earlier in the war. It's been so long since we covered it that I completely forgot the name of this small river since then. And in America, I think this would be called a creek, but we'll forget about that because who cares? But moving on further down, we're going to... Oh, gosh, come on. I hate doing the line thing because you got to do all this weird finagling to try and get it to work. But moving on down, click, 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 click. And then... Let's see. Oh, I'm just clicking away. I'm having so much fun. Hang on, everyone. Trying to get this front line all put together. And click, click. And we'll leave it right there. And we'll highlight this as some kind of a light blue since it's on a river. Russian defensive. They got pushed back a lot. I feel like this would most likely be their best defensive position. Of course, it is giving up a swath of ground. It's a massive amount of ground. And in length, from where they are now at Svatove, it's a whole 30 miles away. So they would have to get pushed back a lot again. But I feel like this would be about the best defensive position they have, because in between there and where they are currently, there is only a handful of lakes and villages to defend until they get to that river. So I feel like that would be their best natural border in the northeast to try and defend from. And once you get there, I believe this river, if I'm correct, is a tributary into the Seversky Donetsk River down here, and it is. So in a way, they could... Oh, that'd be tough, because at that point, well, I can't get into too much detail because then that might start giving away just a lot of, I guess you could say, what the Ukrainians will probably do, because it seems logical, but I think that would be about the best defensive line that the Russians could make here in the northeast, with some kind of a natural barrier, which is what most Ukraine and Russia has been working off of this war. And so I think that would be the best one up there. Moving further south, however, and into Kherson, the border that the Russians would retreat onto here would be the Dnipro River itself, right through here. It's the largest river in the entire country, of course, thanks to it being a reservoir as well, and being one of the most dammed up rivers, sorry, forgive my language, in Eastern Europe. This would become the Russian defensive line here as well. I've seen that through this war, of course, not using a historical precedent, but just using this war as a precedent, the Russians and the Ukrainians love to make defensive lines on the rivers. And so if they have to retreat, they will be making their defensive lines most likely here and here. In these areas, I don't even consider it worthwhile to make a defensive line because there is just so little movement and activity in Donetsk and also Zaporizhia that it would seem to be almost pointless to make a defensive line there. But I hope that that does address the question fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support. It helps us out massively, and hopefully these lines will stand the test of time. Of course, if we're wrong, we're just wrong, and that is what it is. But it would be neat to see that these would end up being correct at some point. One thing that was always crazy to me, and of course just reminiscing, is that in the first days of the war, we said on this channel that the Russians would encircle Kharkiv and Kyiv and most likely just try and besiege the two largest cities in Ukraine, and that's exactly what they would try to do in the first week. It was insane to watch it actually fill in our front line, and in fact, I can actually pull that up for y'all, which would be pretty cool to show. Google My Maps. This was like on day 3 or day 4, so let me see if it'll open. I think our internet's working so poorly, it's taking a minute, but let's see here. Going to go all the way back to day 6, because that would have been the first week. And of course, we always update our maps after each week. So we make a brand new copy of the old map, delete all of the posts that we put on it, and then we make a new one. So what we're about to look at is the Russian front lines, according to this channel and the information we had, on day 6 of the war. And honestly, it's really crazy to look at. So I'm going to move this over here. And this... Believe it or not, Matthew, this was day 6, and this is what it looked like then, and this is what it looks like now. And honestly, it looks a lot better, doesn't it?
I would say.
Yeah, it does. Like, of course, the entire northern front collapsed. We can also see some pretty interesting things here. Oh, man, it disappeared at this point by day 6, but... Man, do I have an... sadly, I won't pull up an earlier map, but going back to this... when you see that the Russians trying to create an arm, they succeeded in a way here to the western side of Kyiv. They actually made it down all the way to Vasilkiv at a point, but of course that was short-lived. The Ukrainians will blast through the E40 Zhytomyr to Kyiv highway and pretty much encircle this small pocket down here after a while. But they did try and besiege the city of Kyiv almost entirely from what we know. And also going back and adjusting some of our information earlier on, it appears that the Russians actually didn't make it into Kyiv. From what I was told later on, the massive firefights we heard at the Kyiv Zoo were actually incidents of Ukrainian friendly fire that were going on, and people were mistaking the Ukrainians for the Russians, and the Ukrainians were mistaking the Ukrainians for more Russians. And so there were some friendly fire incidents that went on there that led us to believe that the frontline situation had gotten a lot worse. But when you look at that, it is insane. Also, for a small period of time, there was a Russian breakthrough convoy that moved from Derhachi all the way around to, I believe, the town of Vysoky, which pretty much encircled the entirety of Kharkiv for a very short while. It was like 24 to 36 hours, and then the Ukrainians destroyed that breakthrough convoy, and the siege was officially lifted just 36 hours later. But it was insane to see it all happen in a particular way. And also, if we go down here, this is something that you can see on the Day 6 map that does exist now. At that point, we said that the Russians would most likely try and push towards Kryvyi Rih, and they probably wouldn't cross the Ba River. They would probably start pushing north towards Snefharivka and also Bashtanka. And days later, they would. They actually made it all the way to Bashtanka. The Ukrainians, of course, destroyed them once they made it there. And if you look at this area over here, it filled in quite well. Of course, it's a broad area, but they did make it. Believe it or not, the farthest the Russians made it was to Vyskopilya, which was the very northern end of this green box that we hypothesized the Russians would make it to. So with that, it's really cool to look back at the old maps in a way, but we assumed that they would do that. And so we've had, of course, not to toot my own whistle, but, you know, who else to do it but us. We've been pretty accurate with our estimations so far, and so I do think that those will be the lines that the Russians will make in the future, and maybe they'll be as right as back then, but we can't be right every single time. We will fail eventually. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next one, we have another $100 super chat from Terrace McGitz, who says, thank you for your Sunday fundraisers for Ukrainian causes. More than halfway to 1 million is very impressive, and I will continue to donate. Hopefully, you guys will get to 1 million this Sunday.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support, Terrace McGitz. It is it's the biggest thing that our channel does. It's the massive thing that I find to be the most important about this channel is the amount of support we're able to raise on Sundays. If anything defines this channel and sticks it out from the rest, I think it's our unwavering dedication to running Sunday night fundraisers. And we've done a huge load of help on that. Now, 1 million in a single fundraiser, getting up that high, we would have to raise like $440,000 on a single night's worth of fundraising. And that may be a little too high. But I still love the enthusiasm, and I will see if we can make that happen, but no guarantees on that one. But I thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support, Terrace. You've helped us out incredibly today in helping this channel to keep running. And also, while we don't get into a massive amount of detail here behind the scenes, we will most likely be digging into some savings pretty much to start doing something else we have to do here inevitably in the next few days, but we will let y'all all know about that probably in several weeks time or days time, depending on how it's going. We will, of course, although this is looking like it may interrupt normal stream schedule, don't take that seriously though. We are going to make sure it does not at all. We will make sure that these streams run regardless of what our life is like, regardless of where we're having to sleep on the floor at that point. We will make sure that these streams always keep running, because that's a promise I made to y'all, and of course, I find it to be terrible when I cannot run these streams because I don't even know what to do if they're not running at this point. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Terrace. It helps us out massively, and it helps this stream to keep on rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again, Terrace, for helping this channel out.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from SuperBunker9000, who says, chat question, please. Slava Ukraine, thank you, Enforcers, for great stream, but most of all, for Sunday fundraisers.
And thank you so much for the support, SuperBonker9000. You have been around forever.
Can you hear me, Enforcer?
Yes, I can. I can hear you. But it looks like we are having some connectivity issues. 1 second, I'll text you that as well, just in case you can't hear me. let's see. We are having some issues. Yikes. Doesn't that sound really 70s-ish?
I saw it.
All right. So it's good to hear that you can hear me again. But moving on from that, and let's see, moving on from that, can you reread that question again? Wait a minute, no, wait a minute, I just remembered it. It's from Superbunker9000, and he said, thank you so much for the streams, and of course the fundraisers, and thank you so much for enjoying this, Superbunker. You have been a long-time Lee Spring Army member, veteran, and like I said before, and of course you've helped to keep these streams running a whole load. And so I got to thank you so much once again. It helps us out impressively. And of course, I thank you so much once again for the support. It means a lot to us, and without y'all, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again, Super Bonker, for enjoying everything that we've done to cover the news, and to also make sure that the news of the war in Ukraine keeps on moving. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Ben Hirsch, who says, Enforcer, I've been watching for months, and I still don't understand what the Leaf Spring Army means. I keep waiting for an explanation. Can you?
Yes, I can. Can you? I'm just playing. To answer that question, the Leaf Spring Army started on day 15 when I made, believe it or not, you might, if you've watched this channel a long time, I never do this, I made an incorrect statement. I actually said that Leaf Springs were incredibly old suspension systems that were not used at all in the modern day. And so for that reason, that Russian, I believe it was a, let me think, what in the world, Panzer system was incredibly antiquated in its technological advancements. And that was a wrong statement. An incredibly wrong statement. Leaf Springs are still used on a lot of vehicles to this day. And the live chat let me know that almost as soon as I said it. The live chat went wild about Leaf Springs, and it was a pretty funny night. That was hilarious because it went from being like, you idiot, Leaf Springs are not old, to like people, Leaf Spring. And then the next day it continued, and then someone said the next day, hey, like, we could be like the Leaf Spring Army, and then it just caught on. We were like, oh, look, that is a really cool name for our like whole community, the Leaf Spring Army. So from here forward, we're just going to call it the Leaf Spring Army. And so then the moniker kind of stuck, and that's why everyone who watches this channel and is a part of this community is called a member of the Leaf Spring Army, is because of that incorrect statement I made like on day 15, and then what almost turned into a joke afterwards. It was hilarious, and I think honestly it was probably one of the funniest moments of this channel. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that finally explains to you the story of the Leaf Spring Army and how we came to be with the name. And of course, that's why you'll see a load of people in our live chat always spamming LSA. Of course, some people say LSD as well, just for the gigs, which is kind of funny. But anyways, a lot of people say LSA because that is also the abbreviation of the Leaf Spring Army. And merciless plug, if you go to enforcerstore.com, you too can get yourself some Leaf Spring Army merch. We don't usually do a merch plug, but this is how ingrained in our kind of like channel culture it's become, is that we have our own little hoodies and t-shirts. I really like the hoodies more. In fact, I'm wearing my hoodie right now. It's not the Leaf Spring Army one. It's actually the Honey Badger one. I love our Honey Badger. But you can see here, it comes in a lot of colors. Navy, black, dark heather, Carolina blue for the ladies, charcoal, light pink, forest green, and also sport gray. And I've really, honestly, my favorite color out of all of them, believe it or not, is navy. I think navy is probably the best one for the Leaf Spring Army, or black. Black or navy is probably the best two colors in my opinion. But Matthew, I'm wondering, what was your favorite color out of our color selection here?
Kind of like that black.
That black. And I gotta say, it is pretty nice. You know, we should have made one in orange. We should have made one in orange, Matthew, so that way it looks like a correctional facility uniform. Also, our t-shirts.
Like what's the like insane asylum colors?
I think it's
There's like a huge delay in the audio.
Yeah, it's like white or something like that.
I want one for the insane asylum for myself.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be pretty good. Also, we have the t-shirt. The t-shirt comes in military green. We could only get these colors for the shirt. I wish we could have gotten them for the hoodie as well. But we got, let's see, military green, black, Tahiti blue, which is a different color, cool blue, which kind of honestly to me looks like a blueprint paper blue. Heather gray again. We've got heavy metal, honestly a good one. I like that one. Light olive, which looks a lot like the color that the Ukrainian army uses for their t-shirts. We also have turquoise, midnight navy, which is kind of like I guess a different shade of navy blue, and cream. You know, for those who like the old kind of like a creamy looking t-shirt that you would have found in like the 1940s. But still, I love the Lee Spring Army. I think it's the coolest thing that we've ever made. And also, I think that at this point, LSA has become a pretty distinct symbol across YouTube. And of course, a huge identifier of people who are massive fans and enjoy this channel. And so with that, I hope that explains that fairly well. And of course, sorry for the merciless plug. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and next up, we have a very generous $50 super chat from Magic Sky Girl, who says, I absolutely love your Sam Elliott and all your impressions. You guys keep up the great work. Be flattered that another channel would want to copy what you do. Nothing can top your channel or the LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, Magic Sky Girl. And I thank you so much for enjoying the Sam Elliott voice as well. Now, I think some people actually misunderstood with that poll what we were meaning, because I saw a lot of people say, no, absolutely not. We cannot have a 3-hour stream with Sam Elliott. It would actually be something similar to Matthew's video, like a 3 to 5 minute video, most likely some kind of a play on an ad, but it will be a joke on the Russians. That's what I probably should have explained that a lot better, honestly, come to think of it. But that was kind of the ballpark idea of what I was thinking. So we're not going to rerun that poll again. It was still like a 50-50, and most people were like, no, don't do that. So we probably won't do that, but at the same time, I really do want to do it because I like doing the Sam Elliott voice. But I thank you so much for enjoying the impressions, and we will try and keep up the great work in all regards, including the voice impressions. Now, with channels imitating us, it is something that we have seen, and I've actually been seeing in the live chat that there may have been a small misunderstanding in between us and another YouTube channel, and apparently they thought we were talking about them, but we were actually talking about a totally other YouTube channel that had like 2,000 or 3,000 subscribers. So we're still.
And Enforcer, I've been seeing that. I've been seeing that all night in the live chat, and the fella that thinks we were talking about him, I've actually been over there to support his channel. So there's definitely a misunderstanding here.
Yeah, but it's funny. It's funny to me. I don't know. Like, we did, like, okay, so I don't know, because all I've heard is what y'all been saying in the chat. I have watched Mercado. Mercado's actually come over here, and we've of course addressed his super chat. We've seen him over here. We've even thanked him for backing us up during the copyright strikes. So I think that may have been a little bit of a misunderstanding. So we're still not going to name the channel, because the whole point of us not naming a channel was to not cause drama. But it wasn't him, and apparently he took that the wrong way. So we're sorry about that. We didn't mean to make you think that we were calling you out. But with that, we're going to be moving on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, Magic Sky Girl.
All right, so moving on to our next one, we have a $20 super chat from Terrace McGitts, who says, Sam Elliott voice is legit. Do what you want. We enjoy everything you guys do, and yeehaw!
And thank you so much for the support, and yeehaw! And of course, we're going to keep up the good work that we've been trying to do with the fundraisers, and of course, reporting the news of the war, and hopefully more video ideas in the future. Matthew, I've got to be honest with y'all, Matthew's video was the bomb. I loved the format. I loved the jokes. I thought it was classic, and I think I want to see more of it. Hopefully, Matthew will come up with a really good schedule. So, you know, I don't know. You can't rush art, but I don't know, Matthew. Are you going to start coming up with a, you know, considering what we know is going on in the background, are you going to start coming up with a formatted schedule, or is it still going to be kind of whenever they come out?
I mean, it's going to be kind of shooting for every Monday, but that might be a little bit too like strenuous, depending on how like involved the video is. But I am currently working on the next one. I've changed the topic to actually. I don't want to blow the whole thing, but just a little hint. It's about Russian assassination. That didn't blow the whole topic at all. But it's going to be very interesting. I'm trying to think of various titles for it. I'm thinking maybe The Art of Falling from Windows might be a good title, but I'm doing a lot of research for it, trying to come up with the general theme and flow of it. But I think it's going to be a pretty good one. It might outdo the nuclear video. And
also, I would have to say, I've actually... not to give a lot of information on the next video coming up, but I have heard Matthew's spiel. Like, he's given me a little bit of a pitch on the next video and an idea of what it will sound like, and it was a very rough draft. In fact, I think he did the whole thing ad lib, but it really good.
Yes.
And I was like, oh man, like it was once again a banger in my opinion, and I think it will do quite well. I think a lot of y'all will enjoy it as well because, of course, that's what we do it for. But with that, I thank you all so much once again for the support. Of course, enjoying the channel, and hopefully we'll be coming out with more videos like that in the future, and maybe some of my own. Now, I know a lot of people liked the government cheese video, but at the same time, it was a little off base for what this channel covers. We cover the Ukraine war, which is kind of narrowed us down into the topic of either Russia, Ukraine, the war, or something related to history or the military. So we're most likely going to start narrowing down our niche to that kind of specific stuff, but I still like the government cheese video, and we might I might make the occasional video that may cover something obscure and kind of interesting like that again, but it might be incredibly rare. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we're on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and next up, we have a $100 super chat from Walter A. Lakota, who says, Aloha, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt and LSA. I sent on Discord the clip of the 28 Ilyushin flying by. You can play it on here. Have you and Matt came up with a title for me in LSN?
And also, I thank you so much for the support, Walter. Of course, you supported us massively yesterday, and I thank you so much for supporting us massively today as well. Of course, don't spend it all in one place, though, because I was like, geez. But thank you so much once again, Walter. Also, to answer that, you know, Matt, he said, have we come up with a title? That has been something I was thinking about doing. You know, like if y'all have ever watched the British monarchy, and I guess you could say the royalty is an institution. I guess that it would include the lords, the princes, and all. They have this whole entire titling process that they go through, and you'll actually hear it if you watch Queen Elizabeth's funeral. They actually read all of her titles for the last time when they were burying her. You know, it's when the man wearing the royal sovereign, he gets up in front of the coffin and he sits there and reads Queen Elizabeth II, Lord of the Commonwealth, you know, I guess you could say defender of the realm and the territories of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and all of that stuff. I was thinking, wouldn't that be fun? You know, like fun to come up with titles like that. I think it would be kind of fun. You know, so that way we could give out titles like I don't know. I guess because I was thinking the Lee Spring Army isn't really democratic because you can't really elect the host and co-host because it'll always be Matthew and me. So I guess we could give out titles like Viscount and Lord and Duke because it may as well be like that since it's a YouTube channel and we can't change anything out with who's running the channel. So maybe let's do this, Matthew. We have created Lakota Jr. Walter. Of course, we're reading for last name first, first name last, as Lord of the North Pacific, King of the Snow Crabs. Well, no, Prince. Wait, hang on. We got to think of a good title for this, Matthew. What is it? Lord of the North Pacific, and the Princely Duchy of the Snow Crab. I think that would be a good title. What do you think, Matthew?
And he is thereby knighted thee.
We need to come up with a whole spiel. We got to have like a little copy paste thing to put down for that, because I think that would be really fun if anyone was like, can I get created a title? And then we were like, we grant thee Lakota Jr. Walter, Lord of the North Pacific. I think that would honestly just be hilarious. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Walter. And I have not seen that video of the Ilyushin 28. If you could send that to me over my DMs, I don't think I've gotten it. Let me check real quick. Let me check on my phone real quick, actually. Let's see here.
Let's see. I think he might have sent it to me. I think I see a message from him in here. Let's see.
Oh, send it to me if you got it.
Let's see. Yes, I do have it. So let me forward it. If I can remember how to do that. Let's see here.
Also, a lot of people love the idea of titles, and I think that would just be funny. Of course, you know, it's a YouTube channel, so the titles wouldn't mean anything, but they would be cool. You know, I just think that would be neat. So, waiting for Matthew to send it.
Let's see here. I'm trying to figure out how to send it. I'm not really sure how to forward this, Enforcer. Do you know how?
I think the best thing to do would be to go over to the far right side of the Discord screen. Then click, I believe it's forward or reply or something like that, or share. And then I think you can send it to me from there.
It looks like it's an uploaded movie, so it's not giving me that option.
Ah, dagnabbit. Dang it. Well, I think we'll have to try.
Walter, if you can, try to send it directly to the Enforcer.
Yes, send it to me, and I think we'll be able to show it here real soon. So let's see here. Let me see. I'm looking through. Let me see. Oh man. Dang it. I haven't seen it yet. Come on, Walter. Come on. Come on, Walter. Lord of the North Pacific. Princely Duchy of the Snow Crabs. Please, come on. Put it in here. I'm waiting for it. But we'll revisit that later. I know that my phone will ring or buzz once it gets that little message, and so we will be looking for it, Walter, and we will show it on stream once we get it. Of course, it has to be in my Discord, though, so make sure to send it to my DM. And so with that, I thank you so much once again, Walter, for the massive amount of support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one in the meantime, but please make sure to send that little message to my DM, and we will show it on stream. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and next up we have a 20. Oh, I see. But anyways, next up we have a $20 super chat from Chip Kerwan once again, who says, "Edict a $5 general order and play an Enforcer, Infant Enforcer, voice clip from week 1."
Oh gosh! Wait, he's asking for us to play a clip from our week 1 video.
Baby Enforcer, like Baby Yoda.
Try I must. Say it wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. For some reason, there's no lag right now. Oddly enough, like you're talking to me in real time. But let's see. He wants an audio clip from week 1 of the war in Ukraine.
Yes.
Oh man. Okay, I'll pull it up for you just because you asked. But oh man, I didn't have the speaking voice, the high pitch speaking voice that I use now. Back then, I actually just used a bit more of my, not really even normal voice still. But let me go to my channel, and let me go all the way back to the video. Oh gosh, there's gonna be a lot of scrolling. You know, I never realized how many of these streams we've done. Like, day 239 doesn't really mean much to me today until I start scrolling through all my videos and I see that I've put up one pretty much every single day. In fact, back in the day, it used to be like 2 or 3 a day for a short while because there were short videos involved. God, oh my. And then Brad C said, but it doesn't get you into the House of Lords, does it? So it's useless. Well, the titles are still cool. I mean, like, you know, they don't have to be useful. They just have to be neat. So we're back to day 113. It's taking a while to load because the internet is, of course, being the internet. And now we're saying that the stream's not running all too well. Wow, and I'm looking back, Matthew, at day 80, and I put down as the title on day 80, Belarus switching sides, because that was when Lukashenko almost waffled. You know, and he was sitting there talking about how good and brave the Ukrainian armed forces were. That was all the way back then. That was happening. And also on
that's
top
some
of that,
nostalgia right there.
On top of that, on day 77, I actually put down that Belarus mobilizes troops, which tells you how many times that Belarusian mobilization panic has happened and how many times that question has probably been asked. But still moving on down.
Yes.
Matthew, our audio is lagging so bad.
This lag is so annoying.
Yes,
it's driving me crazy.
All right, so this one here, Ukraine survives a week. This is day 7. All right. So, day 7, the quality is incredible.
Look, it's the mods that did the mod revolution in the live chat.
yeah, it was before the schism, so they're still there in the chat. So let's check
This was before my time.
Yeah, this is actually before Matthew was even on the stream. This was way back in its infancy. So with that, here's the video, and here's a little clip of me talking in the first week. Actually conquer the Ukrainian people, and they will continue to fight on like almost every country has ever since the beginning of the Cold War, until the Russians eventually just decide to leave. Oh! What?
It's the old enforcer.
Yeah, it's terrible. You'll see why now that I do this high-pitched voice, because, like, just talking and droning on and on, it just sounds so boring. I can't stand it. But look, we can see some legends like Nicholas Rodriguez, who was in our live chat on day 7. Let's see if we can find some other
legends.
What do you know? Andrew Meredith, who is still around to this day. Let's see. Who else? Darth Buddha. Look at that. We actually see a lot of old names here in day 7. So isn't that cool?
Oh look, Enforcer, the mods that turned on the channel, they weren't doing their job. I saw like 2 or 3 trolls they didn't get.
Yeah, well, you know, it was a time of growth. It was a time of learning. And then someone said, "Oh, you sound so innocent." And someone said, "Your voice didn't change, really, bro." And it did to me. I mean, it kind of did to me. At least I felt like my voice has changed. I don't know. Someone said it sounds like another person is talking. Not as good as your Mike Tyson voice. Oh man. But yeah, I mean, it's really wild to see that I have changed a lot in my vocational skills, also the way I talk on stream. I still talk like that in real life, normally for the most part. But with that, I hope I've been able to address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And I hope you enjoyed that short bit of, honestly, embarrassment for me. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from H2O Barry Matt, who says, "Keep it up. Can I get a Slava Ukraine?" And also, wow, just wow, you've raised so much money and changed lives in Ukraine during this pointless war.
And thank you so much for the support and enjoying this channel. We try our best to make sure that those Sunday fundraisers run every single day of the week. And, well, not every single... Well, I said that totally wrong. That is a huge gaffe. That is something on the level of a Bushism. But we make sure to run those Sunday night fundraisers every single week. We've run 31 of them, which is honestly insane. We've run so many Sunday night fundraisers that if we were to put them day after day, we've done a full, complete month of fundraising. Like, that's insane, honestly. So, if we started on November 1st and went all the way to November 31st, well, no, November 30th, we would still have 1 day left over if we were to put all the fundraisers back-to-back, day to day, which is really crazy for me to think that we've run so many of them and this war's been going on that long. But I thank you so much for the support and enjoying the efforts we do to make sure that we can keep fundraising and helping out Ukraine. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and also real quick, while I read off the next one, it looks like Walter has sent you a friend request on Discord before he can send you a message. So if you'd like to take a peek at that. And our next one is a $20 super chat from Terrace McGitz once again. And thank you, Terrace, very much for that continued support as well. Who says, "Awesome. The titles would be legally binding, just like the annexed areas of Ukraine." Laughing face.
1 second. I'm trying to look through. I hate to say this, y'all, but I have 80 friend requests. Let me go through these real quick because there's a lot of them. So going to looking for you. I'm looking for you. Bayraktar. So let's see. I'm going through. Oh man, I'm sorry, everyone. I'm trying to go through. Walter A. Lakota, Walter A. Lakota, Walter A. Lakota, Walter A. Lakota, Lakoti. I don't see him yet. In fact, I don't see Walter Lakota at all. Am I reading this wrong? Do you have another name?
It might be Mariner 044.
Mariner 044. Oh, I found him. Mariner 45. There we go. I think that's him. So try.
I think it's 44.
44. Hang on.
Yes, that might be an imposter with 4-5.
It's an imposter. Let me see if I can find 4-4. I found Algernon. Flowers for Algernon. Let's see here. Moving on down. I can't find a 4-4. I found a 4-5 though. So
Well, I guess you could try that one, but be careful.
yeah, they're going to send me some kind of virus. But with that, I think you should be able to send it now, Walter. And if you can, let us know. And if you can't, let us know. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $16 super chat from... Also, did you answer Tara's question?
Oh, wait a minute. Can you reread that one again, just so that we make sure?
So, Terrace, I didn't forget about you. So, revisiting that question, Terrace says, awesome. The titles would be legally binding, just like the annexed areas of Ukraine.
Hey, that's a pretty good idea. In fact, if you get a title now, you will in fact get a tract of land. So, let's get on some watch lists by giving away land. First, we'll be giving away the federal land in Nevada to whoever gets the title of the princely duchy of the Badlands. Whoever gets that title, you will have all the control of the federal land in Nevada. So now the FBI is like, oh, wait a minute. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Terrace, and I think they should be legally binding. Of course, that's just a joke. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $16 super chat from Andrew J., who says, Enforcer, can you comment, please, on whether the newly arrived alternative warhead M30A1 rockets for the HIMARS have started to have a very positive effect in Ukrainian counteroffensives? Can they be a game changer?
It appears that they have. It appears that HIMARS, due to them using the M30/31A, are able to finally hit frontline targets instead of, I guess you could say, strategic infrastructure. And so that has been making a fairly decent change. From what I know, though, and it seems that this is always being confused, and so I'm not really sure what it even is anymore, the M30/31A1 is in fact some kind of a ball bearing carrying missile which explodes, and then all of these ball bearings go shooting out. They're made of tungsten, which is actually quite heavy. But moving on from that, that is what I think that missile is. I've also heard that it's a unitary head, and I've also heard the same thing about the other missile. I believe it's the M40 that the HIMARS uses. So I'm kind of really honestly confused. A lot of people in the live chat have confused me about which one it is, but still, whatever missile they have gotten, it's now allowing them to attack frontline infantry with them and artillery. And so I would have to say that's doing them a decent amount of good, because now they can bear the heaviest hitting artillery they have against frontline infantry and targets themselves, which is a massive improvement. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and next up, we have a $12 super chat from Subhassus Paul, who does not leave a comment, but thank you very much for the support, and we do appreciate it very much. Up next, we have a $10 super chat from Joe Little, who says, I vote the Ukrainian on the Italian artillery piece for Mustache of the Year.
And we shall grant him the title of Lord of the Mustache, Lord of the Curly Hairs, and title of King of the Mustache Men. But anyways, yes, I have to say, Mustache Man right there, he's giving Belarusian Mustache Man a run for his money. That mustache was gold, and I loved it. I'm a huge fan of mustaches. I love the idea of a curled mustache, but I gotta be honest with y'all, I've just never been able to pull one off well. I've tried before. In fact, I actually do a Jaeger impression of the Revolutionary War, of a German Jaeger, and let me see, Revolutionary War, just to give you all an idea, Revolutionary War Jaeger. I spelled that wrong, but it'll still pull up the pictures. So I do an impression of one of these guys here. This guy in particular. These have a really cool story. I love the story of the Jaegers. It's a really interesting one. So these guys came from Hesse, the Kingdom of Hesse, like the Hessians did. But these guys were specifically Jaegers, which Jaeger in German means hunter. These guys were the hunters hired by the prince of that kingdom to hunt on royal lands. And when the war started and the mercenaries were being sent over, the Prince of Hesse was like, what better idea than to just amass the hunters, which are natural marksmen, into a unit and then send them into America. They did poorly once they arrived. They went into one battle, they got land blasted, and then they got moved to Canada and remained there for the rest of the war. And they actually liked Canada so much they never left. Most of them didn't, at least. And so that's kind of the story of the Jaegers. Really cool story. And what was that super chat again? Can you reread that one more time?
Yes, I vote the Ukrainian on the Italian artillery piece for mustache of the year.
Oh, yes. Anyways, getting back to that, and speaking about the Jaeger, I actually grew out an incredibly long mustache to do the Jaeger impression. It was the 4th of July. I was dying. It was the 4th of July at the American Village in Montevallo, in Alabama. So, now that I've shown my face, it doesn't really matter if I tell y'all where it was or not. But anyways, I grew out my mustache for that. I got out my wax, curled the mustache. It looked great. I showed up. Everyone was like, "Oh, dude, you got a curled mustache. That is sick." I was like, "Thank you." And then, wearing all that wool on the 4th of July in 95, 98 degree weather, I sweated so much that the wax lost its, cohesion, and the mustache just fell apart. So, sadly, it didn't work out for me, but it's working for that guy, and I gotta say, rock that mustache, man. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope you enjoyed that little story about my experience with a curled mustache, and with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Red Lobster Dumpster Fire, who says, for the Wi-Fi upgrade fund, help out LSA folks.
And thank you so much for the Wi-Fi upgrade fund. That might be another kind of upgrade fund. Of course, we're going to try and keep that a little bit on the low key for the next bit, because we're not trying to make it a huge deal, but we are in the middle of kind of a special moving operation. We're having to move, so we will be doing that in the background. Of course, the streams won't stop, regardless. I mean, like, if we have to move into the new place and just unpack the computers and the desk, that's what we'll do for that day. I will sleep on the floor as long as it means that these streams keep running. So, with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. That might be more so supporting our move, but with that, I thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, I was somehow able to figure out how to get Walter's video over there to you, Enforcer, so take a look at your Discord DM.
Let's take a look. Oh, here we go. It's here. Let's take a look. And thank you so much for the video, Walter. And now, huge credit to Walter. Let's watch this IL-28. That is definitely a Russian Navy IL-28. Russian Air Force, most likely. I don't know. Navy? Air Force? Not particularly certain. You can also see the boom that they have on the front. I forgot what this thing... I think it's their version of an... Let me think. I think it is their version of an AWACS. That's some kind of a little radar or some kind of a communications boom. I forgot what it was. Everyone clarify for me what that is in the chat. Because for some reason I can't think of the name of it. And I think I might just be ignorant about the name of it. But still, look at it. That is really neat. Oh, look, wait a minute, Matthew. Look at that right there at the end. You can actually see the binocular set right there. Isn't that neat? Oh, that's really cool. And it's a
I wish I could see it, but sadly the chat is so far behind, or not the chat, the Discord stream, I can't see anything.
Ah, dang it. But man, that is really cool. And also, it's a really foggy day out, very low visibility. And jeez. That's actually wild. And so I thank you for sharing that, Walter. And if you have anything else you want to share with us, please send it directly to me on my DM, because I would love to see more videos like that. That was honestly really cool. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much, Walter, for sending us that video and the support you've given to this channel.
All right. And next up, we have a $10 super chat from Everett McGee, who says, there is a railroad bridge over the river on the north side of the Star Obelisk that HIMARS needs to pay a visit to. It's within range, and I haven't heard anything about it being taken out.
And what's the specific location again?
North side of the Star Obelisk.
Starobilsk?
I guess so. It's spelled Star Obelisk.
That's fine. I think it's Starobilsk, but it doesn't. It's fine. You know, we butchered the name of every other town, so it's totally fine. So let's see the bridge. They said north, correct?
Yes.
North. Let's go north. Wow, that is... Oh, my lord. That would be really north. I mean, it looks like it'd be right here. But let me check again to make sure. So there's one right here as well on the T-13. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, you had a good point. Yep, I see what you mean. I definitely see what you mean right there. And so with that, I thank you for the support and also bringing that up. And maybe we need to call in a little bit of HIMARS. Ding, ding. Or, as they say in the HIMARS batteries, la 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 HIMARS.
Moss.
There's still a little bit of lag.
There's still lag.
Yeah.
So it was like offbeat, like really bad.
Oh, really badly, but it's fine. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and the idea. That was a really good one.
All right. And up next, a big shout out to Junebug, Callie J, and Just Chillin' for each putting in a $5 donation, but without a comment. But thank you very much to all three of you for your support. And thank you for also being around for a very long time. That goes for all three of you. You're all channel legends, as you could say. So up next, we have a $5 super chat from Still Thinking, who says, "Good evening, Enforcer Brothers. Love your channel. Off topic. But what do you know about the progress of the Iranian Revolution and Slava Ukraine?"
And I thank you so much for the support. And I thank you so much for the kind words as well. And to answer that question, I don't really know a lot about what's going on with the Iranian Revolution. I've been focusing so much on the Ukraine war and also on a lot of stuff happening in the background, as one can tell, that it's been really hard to keep up with any news outside of Ukraine for the moment. And so, unfortunately, I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one, sitting and thinking, but I will sit and think about it in the future. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And that was actually Still Thinking.
Still thinking? I thought I was sitting and thinking.
No, that's somebody else.
Well, I'm still thinking on that one. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. And I'm sorry I got your name wrong. For some reason, I thought still thinking and sitting and thinking were one and the same in my head. But with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, a big shout out to Natoya85 as well as Robert Dunville for each putting in a $5 donation. And thank you very much to you two as well for your support. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Big Tex, who says, "It's not martial law. It's a special law enforcement operation."
Everyone has been playing the joke name with the special blank operation ever since the Russians declared it. There's been the special underwater operation. Now we got the special law enforcement operation. And I would have to agree with you. It probably is going to get some kind of silly name in the Russian government here soon. They're going to say it's not really martial law. It's more like special rights revoking privileges. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one. I love the joke. That was actually a solid one.
Indeed. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Suzanne B, who says, "Does Ukraine have an estimate on how many Iranian drones were sent to Russia?"
I actually don't have a number. I know that it's in the few hundreds right now, but they could still be continuously shipping them into Russia. And so we don't have an exact idea, but I can tell you it's at least above 200, I believe, off of the last figure I was able to get. And so with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Yuri Bench, who says, "Israel behaves in a somewhat cowardly way and does not provide Ukraine the Iron Dome system."
Well, I thank you so much for the support. And to address what Israel does is highly political, even when it's addressing something like that. But one thing I will say with definitiveness is that any country that does not really support Ukraine is kind of taking the coward's path out, considering that it would be in Israel's best interest historically to support Ukraine, because Jewish people in general have never really been on the good favor side of the Russian government, specifically the Imperial Russian government or the Soviets, because they actually conducted some pogroms against the Jews during the 30s and the 20s in the Soviet Union. So, take it for what you will. It doesn't really make a lot of sense based off of their historical relationship with Russia to not support Ukraine now, considering that they would be one and the same culturally, at least in their stance against Russia. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Mike Spike, who says, "Did you cover the death of Russian Lieutenant Colonel Renat Kyson, highest ranking officer KIA in a while? Might have to search his name in Russian."
And I thank you so much for the support. But sadly, I have not heard of the... I've not heard of that lieutenant colonel being killed. I will have to try and look into that news after stream, most likely. Also, I have to say this. While I usually say that and I try and look into things after stream, I hope that everyone does understand that over these next few days, I most likely will not be able to find anything after stream because tomorrow we have to get out and do a lot of things pertaining to what we're, having to do. And then we're having to move kind of a little quickly. So it's most likely going to be eating up all of the time we have at all behind the scenes because I still have to keep up with college work, which is piling up. And also I have to keep up with that as well. So it's going to be pretty tough all around for us to follow up on things after the stream. But I thank you all once again for the support, and we will try in the future. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Koljack, who says, did you hear Australia sent a bunch of Defentex D40 drones to the Ukrainians? They are currently in Poland.
Defentex, and what's a D40?
D40.
D4. Oh, it's those! We covered those a long time ago, and it's good to see, long time coming, that these things will make it there. They're pretty much just grenades on sticks that fly. Really neat invention, and I hope that it sees a lot of progress in the future. Also good to know that they're in Poland and hopefully making their way to Ukraine soon. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Ethan Dawson, who says, do you believe that Kherson will be attacked by a chemical or nuclear weapon when Russians retreat, or will they at least test a nuke at sea?
I believe the Russians will most likely not use any kind of weapon of mass destruction because it will invoke the wrath of the United States based off of our threats, and that's something that the Russians want to avoid because that will lead to nuclear war. There's no way their conventional army could stand against the U.S. Army alone, not even, especially the combined arms of the U.S. military. And so I think that they'll most likely avoid using any kind of weapon of mass destruction because that will be immediate and irreparable escalation that they cannot really back down from and they wouldn't succeed from. And so with that, I thank you once again for the support. I hope that does answer the question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Who Dat Dragon, who says, I'm a retired peace officer, so don't have a lot of money, but it's an honest pleasure to support the channel and all the effort that y'all put into it.
And thank you so much for the support. And that is old-fashioned right there. A peace officer. That's like Andy Griffith. Like that brings to mind Andy Griffith.
Yes.
But I thank you so much for the support, and it's totally fine. We appreciate any support that anyone can give, and even if you can't give any support, we still appreciate y'all for watching. If y'all hit the like or just get in the live chat and say, hey, I enjoyed the stream, it means as much to us as support. Of course, support does help us to survive, though. So with that in mind, I thank you so much, and also I thank you so much for being a peace officer. I have not heard that in a while. Usually police are now called law enforcement, and I honestly like the, and of course I'm not really one for the name game and the wordage and all that, but I do think that peace officer is much better sounding for a policeman, and I honestly think that policeman's a lot better sounding than law enforcement, because law enforcement, just by the name itself and what you can derive from it, it almost sounds like their whole entire job is punitive by measure, and there's no semblance of keeping peace or anything like that. It's all about just finding someone and holding them accountable for one thing or another. But of course, that's getting into the wordage and all that stuff, which you can always get into the weeds with wordage. But that's just my opinion. I still love that you're a peace officer, though. And thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep the thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and up next, a big shout out to Eric, Bro, and Junebug for each putting in a $3 donation, and thank you both very much for watching us for such a long time and supporting us as well. We do appreciate it. And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Chris Webb, who says Coffee Fund.
And thank you so much for the support to the Coffee Fund. Of course, it helps us out greatly, and I thank you so much for helping us to get a cup of coffee and a nice little sit-down near the fire. And so with that, we're on to the next one, and thank you so much once again. And also, a lot of people caught on the irony of that statement because the channel's called The Enforcer, and I was talking about law enforcement. And so with that, we're on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Sean Collins, who says, thank you, and buy some yummy snacks.
And thank you so much for the support, Sean Collins. And we will buy some yummy snacks. I really like those foreign Japanese candies. You know, the ones that are like grape flavored and squishy. I haven't gotten them in a long time, but I really do love those little things. They were good. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next one, we have a $2 super chat from Mike Spike once again, who says, DP27, not 28. Sorry, I'm a gun nerd. Love you guys.
Wait a minute, hang on. Did I get that wrong? DP28. There's the DP28. Right here. And then let's pull up the DP27. The Degtyaryov machine gun, or the DP27/DP28, is a light machine gun. So I'm going to give you that one. I'm also going to give me that one because it appears that it has two names. It's either the DP27 or the DP28. So the Soviet Union trial version was the DP27. The general deployment version was the DP28. So you're talking about the trial version of the DP, and I'm talking about the general deployment version, the DP28. So we both got it right. But I thank you so much for sharing that with me. And I actually did not know that this thing was also called the DP27. I thought it was just called the DP28. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Indy Andy 4C, who says, thanks for Sunday fundraising and providing the news. Do you think we'll see Russia KIA numbers over 100,000?
And I thank you for the support, Indy Andy, and I think that we most likely will. Considering how high the numbers have been climbing recently, they've gotten close to 70,000. It is not a far stretch to say that they could reach 100,000 before the end of this war, and that would be a major embarrassment considering how high casualties get in modern wars, which is usually actually quite low. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, Indy Andy, and I hope we answered that question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And real quick, Mandy, how many super chats do we have left?
So let's see. Quick math in the head real quick. Looks like 7, I think.
All right. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, shout out to Dubsy Dabster for putting in that $2 donation. And thank you very much for the support. We also have a $2 super chat from Squamous Amos, who says LSA is a drug similar to LSD.
And I thank you for the support. And a lot of people do seem to enjoy this channel a whole load. Sadly, it looks like a lot of people weren't able to be on continuously because I'm looking at our graph, and Matthew, it looks like a very, very young mountain. Like it's just rigid and it's got jags in it. Like it's unfortunate looking. Like people were getting thrown off the stream left and right on my dashboard, and I hate that. But I'm glad to know that a lot of people do love these streams and enjoy them, like what you're saying. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $2 super chat from Squamous Tarkus, who says, "I'm so sad about the intro song."
I know. I'm very sad about that too. Honestly, I have been thinking about trying to reach out to them and seeing if I could get a license to play it, although licenses are incredibly expensive. And considering what we're doing in the background, we might not be the best time to break into the savings account a little bit too much, but I love that intro, and if it has to go, I will hate to see it go. It's been around ever since this channel started, and it's a very nice one. I love it. I love that rendition of the anthem. I think it's great, but of course, we don't want to get into any kind of trouble, and so it might have to go if that is the case. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and I also hate to see it go too. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another $2 super chat, this time from Terrorist McGitz, who says, "You are right. The wrath will be made by the West."
And thank you so much once again for the support, and the wrath will be made by the West for sure. That's one thing that you can bet your boots on. If the Russians do anything a little too wild in Ukraine, the West will get involved immediately. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $1 super chat from Ethan Dawson, who says, "Should we bother giving Putin an off-ramp or gamble?"
I believe that we should give it a little bit of a gamble. Of course, we want to make sure that with that off-ramp, the Ukrainians aren't losing anything. So it's a little bit of a tough tightrope, but I believe that there should always be a bit of a probe, at least a probe of a diplomatic negotiation, to see if the Russians would be willing to try and save face and back out of it now instead of keeping the thing going on forever. Because of course, it's one thing that we always miss, and I kind of miss it these days, is that the war shouldn't go on forever, and we should be aiming to try and end it as soon as possible. So we should see if the Russians would be willing at this point, although they've made it quite clear that they aren't, to see if they're willing to end the war and have Ukraine benefit from it in the end, but that's most likely not going to happen. I would still see if it's a possibility, though. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And for our final super chat, until we get to our live chat questions, we have a $1 donation from Ethan Dawson, who says, should Ukraine get modern tanks or old Soviet?
I believe that the Ukrainians should get modern tanks. Old Soviet, while they may be familiar with those systems, we have seen that the Ukrainians are incredibly fast learners, so it doesn't really matter if they have never been introduced to that weapon system. They can learn it with a little bit of time. So I think that we should introduce them to more modern tanks like the Leopards, the Leclercs, the Challengers, or the Abrams. Probably not the Challengers because those are in such limited numbers, as well as the Leclerc, but the Leopard and the Abrams are viable options. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we have rounded out the super chats. And so now it's time to get into the live chat questions. We're going to try and answer as many of them as we can. For some reason, I have a headache tonight, which is kind of odd. But I think it's just really more of a pressure or a stress headache. So whatever. I'm built different. We're just going to live through it. And so with that, let's get on into the live chats.
All right, so first up, of course, we have our two decoders of the stream, CFA and WF2U, who say the Morse code says if Putin declares martial law, the soldiers learn karate.
Yeah, ding, 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 ding. You did get it correct, and I hope you see what I did there with a play on words. Martial karate, That's pretty good, isn't it? It's probably not. But I thank you so I thank you so much for translating that Morse code message. And if you are here, the 3,500 of y'all who are still here, I hope y'all enjoyed that little Morse code translation, because that one actually took a little bit of creativity for me to come up with today. And so with that, I thank y'all so much for deciphering that Morse code. Y'all been doing it every single day that y'all have been here. Well, except for two of y'all. Some of y'all have taken vacation, but one of y'all has stuck around for a long time. And so I thank you so much for deciphering these Morse code messages. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Sweaty Chungus, who says, do the automatic grenade launchers disperse rounds in a pattern or in the same spot? I would imagine in a pattern from what if seen from footage. Any input?
Can you reread that one again real quick?
Do the automatic grenade launchers disperse rounds in a pattern or in the same spot? I would imagine in a pattern from what I've seen from the footage, but any input?
I believe it's most likely in a specific area, but due to the wide spread of the grenade launcher, it looks like it's in a pattern. So it's kind of like a mortar. You know, it's aimed towards a specific pinpoint, but the mortar rounds will fall within a radius of that pinpoint. So I think that's more what it's like for most grenade launchers, but I could be wrong. And so with that, I hope that answers the question, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Per, who says, have you seen the news in Norway? 7 Russians are arrested for flying drone over Norwegian gas and oil stations that supports Europe with 50% off its gas.
I have not seen that, and that sounds like some pretty large news. I will try and get into that and see if we can cover it, but I don't know if we'll have the time. But I do thank you once again for letting me know about that. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Superbonker 9000, who says, can you imagine the massive experience Ukrainians are getting while hunting down those cruise missiles? Ukrainian army will be sharing all this info with NATO.
And I thank you so much for saying that. That is a great point. The Ukrainians are getting more experience dealing with air targets now than I believe any other country has with an air defense system yet. The United States, believe it or not, with all of its knowing wisdom and knowledge and technology, doesn't really have a lot of air defense systems. Believe it or not, most of the United States air defense systems rely either on a stationary CRAM or a manpad. I believe, what's the name for the CRAM that's land-based, Matthew? Do you know the name of it?
The CIWS?
Yeah, the CIWS.
I think we have it backwards. I think the CRAM is the land one.
Yeah. It is actually. Yeah. Sorry, everyone. I had to correct that real quick. But those are really our only two air defense systems that I guess you could say could shoot down those kinds of missile systems. And so it's good to know that the Ukrainians are getting some kind of viable knowledge right now that could be shared with the U.S. on how it works the best, because field testing and field experience is far better than any kind of testing in a laboratory or in some kind of controlled experiment, because it gives you a lot better idea of what it will behave like under normal real-life parameters. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and that was a great point. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from O-Tubes, who says, do you hear about China trying to recruit ex-pilots from the UK and Australia, paying them something like $350,000? I don't agree with ex-pilots betraying their country like that.
And I thank you so much for bringing that up. I did see that today. I've due to this being a Ukraine war stream, and also how people were largely indifferent or not really a big fan of us including new news outside of Ukraine into these streams, I was thinking about covering that today, but I decided not to because it is a Ukraine war stream. But I did hear about that, and I think that that should be qualified as treason. These fighter pilots are giving away valuable information, most likely on aircraft like the Eurofighter Typhoon for the United Kingdom. And to think that these pilots are willingly doing that just because they're getting paid, I would consider that to be treason. That would be very similar to during a siege, if the enemy army pays you and you're a citizen of the town, like $100,000 to show them the tunnels and sewer systems under the city, how to get into them and how to get into certain places in the city. That would almost be the exact same. And so I don't really view those things to be positive. I view them to be treason, and I would expect and I would hope that Australia and the United Kingdom would treat those pilots as though they have committed treason. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Chronicler, who says, is Congress approval required for Reaper drones and Apache, excuse me, I'm about to choke over here. Excuse me. Let me start over. Yeah, I'm like dying over here. I was drinking some water. But is Congress approval required for Reaper drones and Apache choppers to be used in Ukraine? It's game over for the Russians if they show up there.
I think that congressional approval is not needed to send those weapons over. I believe all of that authority lies directly on the president, considering he's the commander-in-chief, and I believe he, and of course there's leeway. There's a lot of leeway when you're talking about the government, because I guess in a way you could say that Congress would probably need to authorize that, considering that it's kind of a diplomatic relation with a foreign country in terms of the support we're giving them. And so Congress does kind of have a little bit of leeway with that, just a little, but not really. It's more so in the ballpark of the president. So I believe that the president could send those over without congressional approval. But then again, I got to be honest with you, I'm not entirely certain on that. I've never looked at lend-leasing and also foreign aid in terms of who actually partitions that in the U.S. government, whether it be Congress or the president. But considering that Matthew has a degree in this kind of stuff, what do you think, Matthew?
I'll be honest and fortunate, I was distracted with the live chat.
Ah, man! Okay, well, sadly, I don't think we'll be able to have an answer to that one on this stream, but I thank you so much once again for a great question, and also, Slava Ukraini. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and next up, we have a question from Ken, who says, do you think the Russians will blow the dam on the Dnipro River and flood Kherson?
That's a tough one. We've had that one asked a lot. My first inclination is to say no, but my second inclination may be to say yes. That may be why they're evacuating people from Kherson, so that way they can flood the area and largely keep the Ukrainians at bay, although they probably would have been kept at bay without the river being flooded. And so with that, I hope that answers that question, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Mike Stewart, who says, do you think CRAMs would be more effective at taking out air targets?
I believe that CRAMs would be pretty efficient at taking out air targets. I believe that it would be quite good at taking out ballistic and cruise missiles targeted towards larger cities, because we've seen that they've had a pretty good effect of doing the same thing for U.S. bases in the Middle East. And so for that reason, I think that that would be a pretty good option for a weapon to put around a city somewhere. And so with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well. And we're now going to answer 3 more questions from the live chat, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, what is the next one?
Right, and the next one comes from Portstan, who says, can Enforcer explain the meaning of martial law?
Martial law is when you, by law, force citizens to learn things like dojo, karate, and jiu-jitsu. I'm just kidding. Martial law is pretty much the government whoever is in charge of this land, the government telling the people who live within this land that things are going quite poorly, and because of that, we are going to be stripping you of your basic rights that are provided to you under law, and the military will now be in control. That's pretty much what martial law is by and large. You could see that in the Civil War when Abraham Lincoln declared martial law in the Union and also suspended the writ of habeas corpus. That was pretty much the same thing. And a lot of countries, pretty much every country, has done that during wartime. I don't think the U.S. declared martial law in the Second World War or the First World War, but we did declare martial law during the Civil War, generally because that was within our borders. We have seen that the Russians have declared martial law in the First World War, the Second World War, and I don't think any other, well, I wouldn't know for certain, but I don't think they declared martial law during the war in Afghanistan. We know that the Ukrainians also declared martial law at the very beginning of the war, considering that things were getting very bad. Things were collapsing in Ukraine at that time, and they were trying to get the best hold of the situation. The best way to do that was to streamline everything, declare martial law, and give almost all authority to the military and the military commanders. And so with that, I hope that addresses the question fairly well, and we are on to the second to last one of the night.
All right, and this one goes to Charlotte, who says, "Did you hear about the Russian bomber that flew near Alaska?" I don't think I can read the second part. It's interesting, but sadly I can't read it.
What's it about? Is it like what's the topic of it?
It's a little political.
Oh, sadly we can't read that. But I did not hear about the IL-20. Did you say IL-28?
Let's see. Russian bomber.
I did not hear about the Russian bomber. I believe if you're talking about that one, the Russians love to use the T-95. I don't even know why they're in service anymore. If you look at this, Matthew, tell me, does that look like it's even competent anymore, even modern? Like, this thing is a turboprop, pretty much.
That looks like a piece of junk.
It is pretty much a piece of junk. For some reason, the Russians love it, though, and they keep using it. But I did not hear about it. That's a really normal occurrence, actually. We actually fly B-52s to close to Russian airspace often as well. And that's usually just to try and test air response times, because what better to do and what better way to give a pilot flight hours than to try and harass a rival nation. And so with that, I hope that addresses the comment fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and that viewer is Rick. But before I get to that question, big shout out to Squamous Tarkus for putting in another $2 donation. We do appreciate it very much, and I wonder if you're related to Squamous Amos. But anyways, back to that question from Rick. He says, "First question I have ever asked. Do you and the Enforcer think if the war in Ukraine continues for another year, that the recession in the United States will get worse?"
I don't think so. The recession in the war, for some reason, people are tying our support to Ukraine with the recession. But I would have to be honest with you, getting into fiscal policy, just a small amount, the inflation that we're seeing now, as well as the economic downturn, is mostly being caused because of the massive multi-trillion-dollar bills that we passed during the COVID era. And it's happening now because we cooked the books when those bills were passed. So the inflation didn't happen immediately at that point. It's now happening right now. Now, of course, since I've covered a bit of a political topic, here's the reason why. And it's about fiscal policy. First off, that was done by both parties. So you really can't blame one or the other, because both of them passed massive, unbelievably large bills. I mean, like, I believe one of them was like a $2.4 trillion bill, and the money came out of nowhere. If I'm correct, Matthew.
Basically, I would say yes.
So, and of course, you can get into all the details in the weeds, but they literally came up with the money out of nowhere. That actually made news headlines. They were like, well, it's not coming from tax money, it's not coming from foreign lending. They literally just printed the money up, and now they're handing it out. And that's what's causing the inflation we're seeing now. It's a little bit delayed, but that's really the reason why. So I gotta say, this just kind of is a thing right now, considering that massive spending bills like that cause inflation in the future. It may not be the best thing for the next decade, most likely. Well, not really the decade. The next 5 to 7 years to conduct any kind of overly large spending bills of $1 trillion or more, considering that will only exacerbate the inflation that we're currently suffering, as well as the economic downturn, and make it last a little bit longer. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. A lot of people make a big deal about the money we've sent to Ukraine. I believe right now it's ranging somewhere around $80 billion. And while that sounds like a decent bit, when you look at the U.S. government's spending a fiscal year, it's actually an incredibly small amount. Because they hand out money to everything everywhere, and so also some people are saying it's an oversimplification. It is, and of course can't really go into too much detail because then that's when people just start shooting you down everywhere because you just sit there and get too detailed, and then people think, no, it's this way. And while fiscal policy seems like it would be straightforward, I have never seen anyone in the world agree on anything, whether it be how the stock market will perform or how the fiscal policy works. So we're not going to get into too much detail on that, but still, that is kind of the way I see it going down. It's not really because of Ukraine, and I believe we could still support Ukraine with the kind of spending packages we're giving them without really jeopardizing our economy at all. Especially compared to the spending bills that have been passed prior. And so with that, I hope I addressed that question fairly well, and it is time to round out tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure to run these streams, and of course it's been an absolute pleasure to have y'all here watching them. If y'all did enjoy, please make sure to hit the like button, and also subscribe, because we run these streams every single day of the week except for Mondays. We run these at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every night, so it's pretty hard to miss once you get a schedule down. You will never miss these streams, most likely, unless if there's some kind of weird internet connectivity problem. And so with that, thank you so much once again, everyone, for y'all's support, for y'all's questions, and of course, for y'all's time. And I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Everyone have a great night. Take care, stay safe, and sleep well. Good night, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow.